It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Ooh, Wango's Mando. It is time for TIE Fighter Renegades on Zomia ONE. And, well, I'll say this right on the onset. I'm glad I'm not alone for this because there's nothing better than sharing something you love. And wow, did we get something, at least for me, that I loved. And I think that my man, Robin Freebeard, I think he also loved it. We're going to talk about The Mandalorian in a little bit here. But Rob, welcome to TIE Fighter Renegades, as always, man.
This is the way, baby.
This is the way. Yes. I love that. I love that. I know it's very so say we all like new BSG, which I fucking hate, but this is the way. I was like, oh, that's so simple and so perfect. It's fantastic. Yeah, it kind of, well, never mind. I was going to tell a story. I'm not going to tell a story, but a story that I can't believe that came across the TIE Fighter Renegades desk, shall we say, actually coming right from StarWars.com from their news segment. This is something that came completely out of left field, and we're going to talk about this before we get into The Mandalorian. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about, and maybe some bad stuff to talk about, including, wait till you hear about the Twitter interaction that Rob had with the writer of Battlefront 2. We are going to talk about that later on. We have so much great shit to talk about before episode 9 drops later on in the month of December. This is your November episode, even if it's coming out a little late, but this is your November episode. But something that I'm a little excited for this, and it's going to be on Disney Plus. I can't believe this is happening. I mean, anytime I see Ahmed Best somehow show up in the news, I'm always like, I have to know what's going on. And of course, Ahmed Best is best known, or perhaps for some people notorious, for playing none other than Jar Jar Binks in the prequel trilogy. And certainly a guy who's had a hell of a 20 years, I mean, that's for sure. And so for 20 years later, for him to be involved in Star Wars again in a way that I would have never seen coming is remarkable to me. But frankly, I find myself applauding it. But basically, on Disney Plus is going to have a new show, and it's not Cassian Andor. It's not the Obi-Wan show. No, this is actually a game show called Star Wars Jedi Temple Challenge. I cannot help, as soon as I saw the news, I cannot help but think of things like Legends of the Hidden Temple, or some other shows from Nickelodeon that were really, really popular. Like you said earlier, Rob, they were popular in the 90s. I mean, it's a really hot thing. It is coming out in 2020. We don't have an exact date on that, but basically Ahmed Best is going to be the host of this. I mean, Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is really kind of it's and when I say weird, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it is a weird throwback to a different era.
Sure.
And here again, I was totally unexpected, but I totally applaud this.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, they made it explicit. This is going to be, kids coming on, doing the whole Double Dare thing and everything. I mean, right. Ahmed Best, which you can clearly see in the prequels, is a very physical guy. And so for this to be like, a physical, almost like a kid's American Gladiator style thing, something like that, he's actually a great person to have involved, because he is a martial arts expert. I mean, he's a total package.
Right. Well, he's a dancer too, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has the right personality for it. I mean, if you had seen the interviews he gave at, the last Star Wars Celebration, just a brilliant move on their part. A great pick.
Yeah. And it's so great to have him back in Star Wars.
Right.
I mean, and we've talked about this many times on the show. I mean, myself, I admit I'm not the biggest fan of Jar Jar, at all. And I love episode 1, still not a huge fan of Jar Jar. Not the worst thing ever in Star Wars. That honor goes to Jedi Rocks and Return of the Jedi. But regardless, I don't hate the guy. I mean, and he's had, again, so many trials really, with fandom over the past 20 years. I'm really happy for him to be in on this. In fact, side note, it makes me really I know some people are predicting this and you want to predict responsibly. I'm really hoping that Hayden Christensen is in episode 9, and it'd be nice to see these prequel actors get some, in my opinion, justice.
Yeah.
And validation for their part in Star Wars and their part in it being a genuine success. So yeah, this is exciting for me. Any other thoughts on Jedi Temple Challenge, Rob?
Well, I mean, kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, but I do think that the prequels are kind of going through a bit of a renaissance right now.
Yes.
We're going to review Jedi Fallen Order later in the episode, but that, game is very reverent towards the prequels. There's a lot of stuff in there that, you see, prequel era technology, kind of, crashed ships and whatnot.
Right.
And there's even flashbacks to the prequel era. It was just really well handled, and we'll, like I say, we'll talk about it. But I think it goes to show that Disney isn't as, or at least the people who are handling Star Wars right now aren't as afraid of the prequels as they were, say, back in 2015 when they took over Star Wars.
Yeah. I can't help but think also, I mean, the instant that I read this news as well, that probably one of the and I totally agree with you on all of that. But just like a quick note on this, I get the sense that probably like the end challenge of this whole thing is going to be some kind of Sith temple. And I thought it was very interesting. And I said this before I think I'd even seen this episode. But there's the episode of Resistance. I think it was episode 7 of season 2, where it's kind of an Indiana Jones style episode, and they end up in a Sith temple. And the person that Kaz finds there says that, Jedi always built their temples on top of Sith temples, because it was a way of like suppressing and meditation and whatever else.
That includes the Jedi temple on Coruscant.
Exactly. Right. Which, it was a fascinating thing. I mean, my understanding at that time was that when that was first revealed was that the Jedi didn't know that. But I guess maybe that's not true. I don't know.
I think it was more of they had forgotten about it.
They'd forgotten.
Because it was so long ago. And apparently this thing is like really deep down underneath the Jedi temple. So it was something that, was probably in the early days of when the Jedi first, founded the temple on Coruscant. And they probably knew about it back then, however, 1,000 generations ago that was.
The old De Werda Verda days. Yeah.
Right. and then like so many other things, kind of as the prequel era kind of highlights, the Jedi kind of, they lose their way and they forget about a lot of the things that they were supposed to be about, including what's lying literally right beneath them.
Yeah, which because I think it had been suggested at points, maybe it was in Clone Wars or what, I'm not sure, where like that the dark side coming up from that Sith temple was influencing in a negative way the Jedi, and that's part of like what even led them to be a part of the Clone Wars in the first place. But I'm not sure where exactly I heard that, or maybe that's just like a suggestion I got. I'm not sure, but regardless,
they did make that official at some point that they said that. And I don't remember where this was exactly, but I know it is official. No, it was in the one of the early books, the Lords of the Sith. They talk about it.
Well, in Tarkin, I know the Emperor's in it. Oh, and maybe that's okay. Maybe either of those. They might
it's either Tarkin or Lords of the Sith, where they do mention that the Sith temple is beneath the Jedi temple.
Yeah, I know it's definitely in Tarkin. Might be in Lords of the Sith as well. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that the Star Wars kids show running right now, Star Wars Resistance, went to a Sith temple, didn't really do much there, but just seemed to like bring up that point that, oh yeah, these are under, a lot of Jedi temples. And I kind of wondered if that was like a foreshadowing at, well, when we get to, we got the peanut gallery in the back. That's all right. I always say I love getting to, I love hearing his barks on the show. So yeah, I can imagine that in this Jedi Temple challenge, the end of the last challenge might be like the Sith Temple underneath, which could get, I don't know, that could be kind of cool. So anyway, bottom line is that I'm sure there's going to be some prequel love in this. Ahmed Best being involved is some real prequel love, and I'm all about that. So shockingly excited to see this, and I mean, I watched all those shows in the 90s. I don't know about you, Rob. I watched Double Dare and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great time. So what the hell, let's see what it's got. But now that said, now let's get into the real, let's get into the goods. Because holy fuck, is it good? I mean,
I
go ahead.
Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are saving Star Wars. I have spoken.
Yeah, I have spoken. yeah, this is going to be spoiler rich, folks. So there's no way. I mean, somebody's got to talk about it with spoilers. I mean, this is. I've seen so many venues, outlet or media outlets saying this is basically the #1 show in the world right now. I could totally believe it. It's amazing for a lot of reasons that it is, but I absolutely believe it. So we're 5 episodes deep as of this recording. And just wow. I mean, but from episode 1, now I don't know how we want to break this down.
Well,
go ahead.
Just a second. Like, speaking of the coverage, did you see that article where they were saying Star Wars fans aren't arguing about The Mandalorian and it's weird?
No, I didn't see that.
I mean, that says it right there.
Yeah. No, well, I agree. All I've seen is positivity around this.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it is what Star Wars is supposed to be. There's something there for everybody. Yeah.
I mean, the one word I did not think that A, I would want out of this, and B, that I would even be saying about it is that it's even cute.
Yeah.
Like ridiculously cute. I mean, I picture, a guy that looks like Griff Halloran or something, the most tattooed up guy, motorcycle helmet on and everything, and just stopping and watching this going, aw, because it's just, you can't help it when you see Baby Yoda, you know what I mean? Which is now probably the biggest meme on the internet going.
Hey,
go ahead.
And how brilliant, I mean, just amazing that they were able to keep a lid on that for as long as they did.
Oh yeah, bravo. I mean, nobody saw that coming. That was really, really something. Yeah. Again, I don't even know how to break this down, how to even really talk about this. But I mean, we just got to say from the onset, I think it's perfect. I have no complaints about any of it. I think I heard some people complaining about the music. I think, what's his name? Göransson there, Ludwig Göransson. I think he's doing a tremendous job. It sounds like something out of the 1970s. Now, to be clear, and we talked about this when it was announced that he would be doing the score. He is also the guy that did the soundtracks for the Creed movies. And so it's amazing because Apollo Creed happens to be in this fucking show, which is interesting in and of itself. But also, there is very much a Rocky, who of course was scored by the legendary Bill Conti. There's a Rocky feel to this, but what I really think that delivers, not so much like the striving and sort of the Rocky sense of things, but it gives it a 70s feel, which it needs. Yes. And I think the music is dynamite. And also I've really appreciated that we are getting a soundtrack for every single episode, or every chapter as they're calling them. So there's five soundtracks out there right now for this, and they keep coming out with one as the episodes come out. And that's a real treat. I haven't gotten that since Babylon 5, when they would do a soundtrack per episode.
And the other real treat is the concept art they're putting in at the end of every episode.
Beautiful.
Oh, just great. I mean, a book hasn't been announced yet, but I can only imagine there's going to be an Art of the Mandalorian book at some point. And you're going to bet I'm going to pick that up day one.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Actually, that just reminded me, there's a book that I don't think we're going to get to this month. That we both pre-ordered and that we both got our hands on. Was that the Rebel Starfighters?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk about it a little bit later, but just a side note there. Anyway, we're talking about the Mandalorian right now, baby. I mean, the effects are perfect. Do you have comments on the music? And then, Rob, do you have comments on the effects?
I completely agree with you on the music. Mm-hmm. And I think it from the start, I was getting the sense of this sort of 70s aesthetic. And this is actually one of the reasons why I really love A New Hope, is because Star Wars existed in that area and it could have only been made at that time, in my opinion. And so for it to come back to that, we really haven't had that, since the original trilogy, in my opinion. And so to come back to that, it really is something special. I can't even put it in words on how awesome it is and how much I love it. As so far as the music go, I like I totally agree with you. I love the sort of Western spaghetti Western aesthetic of the music, and the effects. The effects are just phenomenal. I mean, with a few exceptions, I think in the most recent episode they had some Tusken Raiders and the costumes looked a little off the shelf, but other than that, great. I mean, the show just I can't. I mean, I don't know how much money they're spending on this, but it definitely looks like they're shooting way above the belt of your average TV show, even your average science fiction, big budget TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, it might have even been a blank check because they had to get this right. Like Disney Plus is very much riding on this, and it's succeeding on it as well.
Right. Might also be the reason why we're only getting 8 episodes this season too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because it was that expensive. But here's the funny thing about. I'm glad you said this because this is a point I wanted to bring up, and this is. I don't know what word to use. It's not coincidental. Ironic doesn't seem to be the right word. I guess it's strange to me. This is a very tight, dare I say, even though they go to multiple planets in this show, even just over the past 5 episodes, it feels overall, other than maybe episode 5 when we go to Tatooine, it's a very claustrophobic show. Like everything feels very small and tight. Meaning like the bulk of the sets, a small cantina, a little farmer village, the cockpit of his ship. And I mean, the entirety of his ship feels very small, even though you see amazing things in it, carbonite, the whole business.
Right.
Basically what I'm saying is I have seen fan films for Star Wars that have a broader scope than I've seen, certainly in the first 4 episodes of this. And what amazes me about that is that you don't, I feel like you don't have to play on really big scales to do, you just have to have an amazing story.
Yeah.
You have to have really not even engaging, enrapturing characters and mystery, and all this. And once you have that, you don't need much. You don't need a big cast. You don't need, any of that. This show, it's amazing because I agree with you. It's perfect, and it's probably very expensive to pull off everything that they're pulling off. But at the same time, I think a fan film could almost do this. And it's just it's weird to me, just that dichotomy almost. But it all does just highlight all you really have to do some great fucking writing, and it doesn't matter the scale, scope, or whatever, and it works. And I think that's a case that we have here. But I mean, do you have any comments on that? If not, we can move on.
I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, I'd say I 90% agree with you because like I would say in the last episode they kind of opened up the lens a little where we got some wide angle shots where you have the desert vistas and so, and we see like Mos Eisley in the way we haven't seen it since A New Hope. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you there. And it is really interesting. I hadn't noticed that before, that a lot of the shots are kind of really tight. But it does bring up a good point. And the other point being is that even with the story, it doesn't need to be a really, complex, deep philosophical story either. This isn't, a huge story. I think, Brian and I, something that we both complained about with like the Star Wars novels is that the scale seems to be too small. Yeah. And where that didn't work for the books, it definitely works in this format.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with you. And part of that is, and I've mentioned this many times, is that Star Wars, there are great Star Wars books, but ultimately Star Wars is a very visual franchise. It's a very visual affair. Right. And like, that's why Star Wars comics are usually historically, in my opinion, have been far better than any Star Wars novel. And that's because Star Wars really does rely on a lot of cool factor, a lot of flair, a lot of, all this other stuff. Right. So yeah, I think the reason why it works on television, not so much in books, is because Star Wars, just when you have that visual element, it's just that special.
And that's the thing with the books too, is like the really great books is it seems to be, writers like Timothy Zahn are aware that they don't have that visual element to rely on,
Hmm.
so they kind of up the scale of it to 11, and that
Yes.
makes up for it.
Right, right. Yeah. So yeah, books work well when you have a lot of fleet action and yeah, things like that. That's when it seems to come together is when it's on a really, really grand scale. I think that's why for not everybody, I know you weren't the biggest fan of like New Jedi Order. Um, but I think for a lot of people, they really love New Jedi Order because it was just that it was so fucking huge, and at the time, CGI wasn't exactly what it was yet. And that scale could only be done in a book,
Right.
and so it worked there. So that's a great point to bring up. Yeah. Um, Man, I mean, I don't know how much there is to say. I mean, I want to deep dive like episode per episode a bit, but just to get into the overview of it, the acting I think across the board has been great. Even Gina Carano, which there are people who have been critical of her in the past, she has tremendous presence. But I thought as Cara Dune, I thought her acting was right on, and
Yeah.
she just looked legit as fuck. I mean, it was great.
Yeah. I mean, I have no complaints. She did a great job.
Mhm.
If I didn't know any better, I would say that she is a professional actor.
Yeah.
Um, and did you watch the where they did the cast interview on the premiere where
Oh
they put
yeah.
up, yeah, I like the thing I really love about her off screen is she just comes across as so very sincere and happy to be involved in this project. And I
Yeah.
really love that about her.
Yeah. Yeah, she really loves having a good time. I mean, even at like the premiere, she was basically dressed like a Disney princess. I mean, I think she's having the time of her life being able to do all this
And
stuff.
it shows, yeah, it
Yeah.
really shows. I think she even made a comment how like she had almost kind of given up on an acting career
Mhm.
until this project came along. And just to see somebody take such joy in their work is just a really pleasure to see both on and off the screen. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad she's involved.
Yeah, and something I'm going to bring this up. This has specifically to do with episode 4, which is what she's in. Now that was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, and I wonder just how much having a female director directing Gina Carano, which I think this is the first time she ever dealt with a female director. I wonder if that really brought her out of the shell, and like they had a way of really connecting with each other, um, because yeah, I don't know, like I think look, I've been a fan of Gina Carano when she was on the reboot of American Gladiators in the aughts, and she played Crush, or she was one of the gladiators. She was Crush. She was awesome. I mean, and you just watched her, and you're like, wow, that person's got a ton of presence. And so I was always like, totally pleased when she started getting into acting and everything, even though that show ended. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can admit that some of her roles have been a bit rough around the edges. But yeah, she just seemed to fit right in with this, and it just worked so well. I mean, and of course, other actors involved. I mean, what can you say about Carl Weathers? The guy, instantly owns a screen when he's on it, and that was awesome. Yeah, and Werner Herzog.
Werner Haas, oh man, I
Oh man,
cannot say enough good things. And apparently we have him to thank for them keeping the Baby Yoda puppet instead of doing a CGI one, which, bravo to him. Thank you for, speaking up for practical effects.
yeah, well, I'm sure he wanted something to act against, I mean, because we all know the story about where Christopher Lee, I think it was during Lord of the Rings. I don't think it was during a Star Wars movie, where he broke down and cried in front of the blue screen and said, please give me something or the green screen, give me something to act against,
Right.
I mean, he was just dying for it. And so, yeah, I like it when these, guys that have been around, these seasoned actors say, no, motherfucker, I give me something to play against. This is how acting's done.
Well, I think he was even coming at from a director's point of view because that's
Sure.
really his trade. And the article I read, he straight up, he came to Filoni and Favreau and said, you guys are cowards if you replace Baby Yoda with the CGI character.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. It's so great. Yeah, and that puppet work is great. I mean, Baby Yoda is just I mean, obviously it's a merchandising play,
Yeah,
but I don't
mean,
care.
right. That's one of those times where it works so well that you don't mind that that they're gonna go out and make a shit ton of money from the merchandise.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's always been kind of Star Wars. I mean, like we probably wouldn't have Star Wars wouldn't be as big as it is if it wasn't for all the merchandise of the toys and stuff when we were kids, because that was really what made George Lucas's empire what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly what funded it. I mean, we wouldn't have half of what we do because all those, I mean, he kept the rights to all this stuff. And if he didn't have, I mean, the prequels are the biggest independent movies ever made, the most expensive independent movies ever made. And they were made because he had all that fucking money from, from the merchandising. Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's one case where the money went directly back into the great story. And that doesn't happen often, but I'm glad it did in this case. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other elements to bring up. I mean, the direction and writing has been nothing less than perfect. Certainly, we're going to talk about Deborah Chow when we get into episode 3.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting, because she was, as we talked about in the last TIE Fighter Renegade, she was handed the reins to the Obi-Wan series. And I mean, what much better hands could you get them in than Dave Filoni, who also did his live action. Is this his debut as a director?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. He did episode 1, and well, I mean, let's start breaking these babies down. Let's talk chapter 1. Go ahead.
It's funny you bring that up because during that cast and crew interview, Dave Filoni was relating a tale about like his first day on set, and like one of the crew members comes up to him, as the sun's coming up, and the guy says to him, "Well, the clock is ticking," and Dave Filoni's like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, when that sun sets, it's all over. We're done for the day." And he's like, "Oh yeah, sunlight. That's a thing I've never had to deal with before," because he's always been an animator.
Right, and they can go all day.
Right.
Yeah, that's well, all I could say is that he learns quick because he knocked that out of the park. The first episode had me hooked instantly. I mean, I was just and the other thing that's amazing about the show, the average episode's what, 32 minutes?
Yeah.
That's amazing to get, I mean, we're certainly very trained to shorter episodic versions of Star Wars. I mean, Clone Wars episodes 23 minutes. Same with Rebels. Same with same with Resistance. So that's okay. But to pack in so much story and to deliver so much with so little words, which I also really appreciated out of the entire character of the Mandalorian, of course, being done by Pedro Pascal. Dave Filoni just hit it, man. I mean, what do you think?
Well, that's I mean, being familiar with his work on, both Clone Wars, Rebels, and even Last Airbender, that's kind of what I've come to expect of him, is just very narratively dense content.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's really good at delivering. And boy, does he bring it here.
Yeah, and he's got to be having the time of his life getting to deal with Mandalorian culture and really create it as he goes, more so than he already did in Clone Wars.
Right.
And because, I mean, Clone Wars was dealing with very much a I don't know what the term I'm looking for is, not re-identification, but
well, it was a different era. They were they were really trying to, the Mandalorians during the Clone Wars were really trying to reinvent themselves as something. That's the word. As something other than this very strict warrior culture.
Right.
And now, that things are so dire for the Mandalorians, but they're no longer under the yoke of the Empire. They're kind of like they're having their own little renaissance and going back to the old ways.
Yeah, which that's one of the many mysteries we have set up in the show, and all of these mysteries are what's, I think, making it so gripping every week, or part of what's making it so gripping is the Great Purge. We don't know what this is yet.
Right.
That they're talking about, that the Mandalorians had gone.
I mean, you kind of get some of the hints of what that could have been from the last season of Rebels, because the Empire definitely was digging its claws into Mandalore.
Right.
And you had that whole thing where Sabine Wren invented that, device that was, killing people that were wearing the Beskar armor. So that's definitely you can definitely kind of fill in the blanks, but we don't have, the story of, we don't know what happened to Bo-Katan.
Yep.
And we don't know what happened to even Sabine.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a story to tell there. And I'm very interested to see whether or not they're going to do any flashbacks or go into just deeper into telling stories about that.
Yeah, yeah, and either flashbacks or, well, this show isn't afraid of doing flashbacks, which I applaud. Of course, Last Jedi already set up that precedent for us in Star Wars that can be done. But yeah, I'll say this here. I hope we get Bo-Katan. I hope we get Sabine. I'll take both. I definitely want Bo-Katan, and I definitely want what's her name there, Katie Sackhoff. I definitely want Katie Sackhoff. I mean, she voiced her. Katie Sackhoff is real and a tremendous actress. You know, as much as I hate Battlestar Galactica, I recognize her talent. Bring her right in. You know, and dye her hair red and bring her in. Like, that's fine. So I hope for that. And I almost think like it has to happen. And with Filoni there's no reason for it not to.
Yeah, she's kind of the right age to be the age of what her character would be during that time too.
Precisely. Yes, absolutely. And we don't really know we know she was the younger sister to Duchess Satine, but well, anyway, that would be great if that ends up working out. But yeah, chapter 1, you know, it just, all of it instantly hooked you. Everything, it had all the right cues. I was very impressed, and this has been true for every chapter so far, or every episode so far, is the attention to detail, yes, but more specifically to technical specifications in universe. You are like, there's constant reference to, what type of ship is this? And they give you the full, well, this is a T whatever, you know, I mean, like, and they get into all of that. And I love that, because that's what, you know, back when we got the technical manuals in the 90s for Star Wars, that's what made Star Wars all the more real. And to get constant references to that stuff in almost every episode, I've really enjoyed that. That's been very nice as well. And chapter 1, you know, set up that precedent too. But yeah, we have a lot of mysteries getting set up in chapter 1. I think that hooks everybody in. I mean, ending off with the, you know, opening up the little baby carriage and there's baby Yoda. I mean, that was such a what the fuck moment. Right. You know, like, oh, yeah, no, I mean, and you were told it was going to be 50 years old, so you weren't thinking this. It makes sense when it's a Yoda, whatever the hell that is. But yeah,
and it was something that we never expected, because we had always heard from George that was forever. Yoda's species was going to be the enduring mystery of the Star Wars universe, because he was never going to talk about what the name of their species is, where they came from, any of that. Right. And they're not exactly telling us any of that now, but here again, we're deepening the mystery of his species with the child.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, again, you speculate responsibly, okay? Well, I mean, let's hit this here. What do you think? If it's 50 years old, it can't be a reincarnated Yoda, right? Like the character himself, Yoda. How about like Child of Yaddle? I mean, what do you got?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because she leaves the Jedi the Jedi Council after episode 1. Right. We don't see her after that. Yeah, just disappears. Yeah. So I mean, it would stand to reason that, you know, she left to have this child.
Yeah, yeah. I think that would, I mean, that's about the best thing going. And if Filoni wasn't involved, if anybody else is involved, I wouldn't even bother like even thinking about that, because it'd be like, well, they don't know anything about Star Wars, whoever the fuck's making this, so I don't care. But Filoni knows everything. And we are getting references. We got the pit droids in chapter 5. We are getting, and even in chapter 5 when they're on Tatooine, they mention, I mean, you see Mos Eisley, but they also mention Mos Espa. So we're getting plenty of episode 1, direct episode 1 love in, you know, in The Mandalorian. So that'd be nice if there's, I would be there for a Yaddle connection, but that's pure speculation. Right. And I'm fine with any answer. I think, frankly, I can't think of a bad one that they could possibly come up with where I'd be like, oh, well, that's stupid. I just can't imagine that. What else? You got anything else to say on chapter 1?
No, I mean, like I said, it really was just a perfect episode and a perfect introduction to the series. And I have minor criticisms of other episodes, but like I can't find any fault in this first episode. Yeah, it was everything it needed to be.
Yeah, yeah. And was that Nick Nolte there doing the "I have spoken"? That it was, and that was an Ugnaught, right?
Yeah, Ugnaught. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know. I just
Yeah, it's
Really,
hilarious.
it is. Yeah, I mean, well, it just the voice just kind of like here again, like kind of lended this sort of gravitas to this sort of, like I said, this 70s era spaghetti western, aesthetic they're going for. It's just brilliant casting in this
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, and I remember we specifically called out Nick Nolte saying he was going to be fantastic. Like he was going to, whatever he's doing in this was going to be awesome, and it ended up being true. Yeah. So yeah, perfect opener. I
Yeah.
can't imagine
I
any
mean,
way they could have done it better.
that line when he's trying to train him to ride those creatures, and the Mandalorian keeps falling off, and he comes up and says, like, you're Mandalorians, you're the ones that rode the great mythosaur.
Yeah.
That was so great. I mean, that's the kind of great storytelling that just lays down the mythology and grandeur just in a simple line about
Yes.
trying to ride a creature.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something that the Mandalorian, I want to talk about that for a second. This is something the Mandalorian has brought back that I realized is missing from the sequel trilogy. And this was initially a George Lucas touch. Clearly, I think he taught it to Filoni. And that is he creates a lot. He just there's little, even in the prequels you get this, okay? Where, for example, when in episode 3, when Obi-Wan and Anakin are talking, and Obi-Wan says, no, Anakin, you go with the politicians, this is your day. And they're saying, you saved you saved me this many times. Like, oh, no, that business on Caden Nemoidia, that doesn't count. And when
Right.
Obi-Wan says that, we have no fucking idea what the hell that business was. It doesn't matter. Like, little lines like that. People talk shit about Lucas's writing all the time. No. It's little lines like that we have no idea what the hell they mean, that flesh out the universe and give you history with these characters, even though you don't know.
Another perfect example, Return of the Jedi, when, Lando's made a general, and he says, yeah, well, somebody told him about that little mover at the Battle of Tanab. Like, we still don't know what that's about.
We've been talking about that for fucking 30 years, and we have no idea what the hell that is. Everybody's wondering, like, what's the Battle of Tanab? Like, are we going to find out about that someday? And that's, the sequel trilogy, I realized, never does that. It never, ever, you never get a line like that. Or if you do, it's always something a little after the fact that maybe Finn did when he was in the First Order. But actually, fuck, where was it that I was reading about that Finn, where he feels bad about? Oh, it was in the Last Jedi novelization, where we don't have to get into all that.
See, that's not even in the movie, so it doesn't count.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, but yeah, that's amazing that writing is here, and where you're getting just those little jabs of a story of like, whoa, what's the great mythosaur? For a lot of people, they don't know. Right. But you just say it, and it just makes the world that much bigger, even though, again, this is a very tight show. Yeah, that was awesome. Agreed. So why don't we talk up a little bit of Chapter 2? And then 3, 4, and 5, I think, are much bigger shows to really talk about. Chapter 2 was great. There hasn't been a bad episode. Every single episode, in my opinion, has been great. Chapter 2 is setting the stage for everything we've been seeing afterwards, I think. Definitely setting the stage more than Chapter 1. You're getting to know a little bit about that this Mandalorian has more of a moral code. You get you get some cuteness with Baby Yoda. I don't have a whole lot to say about Chapter 2, other than it was some pretty cool action.
Yeah.
With all of that. But
I love the Jawas. Yeah. I mean, when he's crawling up the side of that sand crawler, and he gets to the top, and they all just kind of blast him off. That was so. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it was cool.
Yeah. No, that really was. I thought Chapter 2 was right on. If you don't have a bunch more to say on that, I think getting into Chapter 3, because this is like the episode, in my opinion. You want to skip right in?
Sure.
So Chapter 3, this is the one directed by Deborah Chow. And this is where, basically you're having the Mandalorian and the baby, they are escaping, but you discover so much more about, well, what is the Mandalorian doing? Why is he going after Beskar? What's the deal? You get some hints into all of that. And this is where the phrase, of course, this is the way comes up. We even get, we get so much great stuff in this. There's we get introduced to another Vizsla. And I think he was also voiced by Favreau, as he was in the Clone Wars.
Apparently he's not.
Oh, okay.
I did look at this. Now, I thought he was voiced by somebody else from Star Wars history, because I could have sworn he sounded like Candace Ordo from the Old Republic. That's who he sounded like to me. But apparently, no, that's not. It is a different voice actor, and it's not that voice actor.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah, that was cool to get a Vizsla in it anyway. And man, well, I mean, let's just get to it. At the end, when those, once you have a bunch of Mandalorians with their jetpacks going off in live action, my mind was fucking blown. I was like, oh yes, this is what it's all about right there. And I mean, not since like season 5 of Clone Wars. It might have been like episode 3 is one of the early episodes of Clone Wars, where it's actually when Duchess Satine gets killed. And Obi-Wan is, going off with the rebels, in fact, with Bo-Katan. And there's the point where like they're getting away. They think they're getting away, and he just opens this huge door. And when the door opens, you're just seeing Mandalorians and rocket packs fucking everywhere. Yeah. And they're just blasting everything. And it's just this massive war. And I remember seeing that, over about a decade ago, and just, jaw on the floor, like, holy fuck, what was that?
Right. And it was the sort of thing where you're going like, man, they could only do this in an animated series. Right. And now we have this, and it's live action, and just mind blowing all over again. I mean, the Mandalorians surrounded by bounty hunters, and then suddenly you're just surrounded by guys, Mandalorians on jetpacks and blasting everybody. And in so many little things we got solved. We know what disintegrations are now. When Vader says to Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back, he says, no disintegrations. We never knew what the fuck that was. Right. Now we know what disintegrations are. Right. And they're pretty cool too. Yeah. It's especially cool because that weapon first showed up in the first appearance of Boba Fett in the holiday special. Yes. Yeah. A lot of hints to that, which again, that was 70s Star Wars. So, the only thing we saw him to use it for is to slap the backside of that, dinosaur looking creature he was riding. It was basically a cattle prod. Yeah. Right. And turns out to be a lot more than that. Yeah. Oh man. It was, the action in this episode overall was just tremendous. Deborah Chow directed it. Once again, just out of the park. We were saying it earlier. She just slammed it. It was so solid. Yeah. If this is the kind of game she's going to bring to the Obi-Wan TV series, then we have so much amazing Star Wars content to look forward, not just in The Mandalorian. Yeah, no, and to get Star Wars action to do it that right, and that is almost all on the director. I feel so good about this. It's one of the things where I'm just like, yeah, Star Wars. All right, this is, like you said, this is saving Star Wars. It really is. And I did love also the nice nod. I recognized it instantly. I know lots of people talked about it on online as well. But when the Mandalorian is leaving, he's escaping and getting away. I got to get one of those. Yeah. But when and I think that was Vizsla there. Like he does the Rocketeer. The whole Rocketeer salute. I thought that was so cool because I fucking love that movie. In fact, I'm looking right up here. I got the Blu-ray right up there, and actually I have the action figure of the Rocketeer right above it. I thought that was so slick. I was like, yeah, nice Disney reference there. That worked. Yeah. I think it was when he said that line too. It's like I got to get one of those. I was like, wait, didn't Sabine say the same thing in like season 2 of Rebels? Oh yeah. Yeah, perfect. It was perfect Star Wars. Episode 3, this show was already doing great, but then it just went, the bar went way higher. I'll say it right now. This was my favorite episode. Yeah, same here. As perfect as episode 1 is, it is still doing all the kind of introductory work that you have to do in the first episode of these seasons. So it's only so high that it can go. Right. So it definitely laid the ground perfectly, but this episode 3, The Sin, just really showed us how high this series can go. Yeah, and I'm glad also that
Carl Weathers' character did not die. That was nice, and
Yeah.
they worked that out well with him having the Beskar. That was very clever. The writing on this is so clever. Like, a lot of times I think we're so we've watched so many movies, so many TV shows. We know when something is meant to be like, oh, they did that. That's kind of out of place. That's going to mean something later on in the show. I would have never thought of the fact of the Mandalorian giving Carl Weathers' character some Beskar would have led to him staying alive at the end. It just seemed to make sense when he did it, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Or not that it gave it to him, whatever, he had some.
Yeah, well, he got a cut as part of his, facilitating the bounty.
Yeah, exactly, with the guild. So yeah, the writing was so great in this as well. To not, I mean, I just didn't expect it. But that was awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more good can be said about chapter 3 because it was again perfect. And I agree with you; it's my favorite episode so far. That rocket pack sequence at the end was so fucking great. We can move in. Go ahead.
The other thing I want to mention is like how much I love the Mandalorian compound with the armor.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who is playing that character, but man, another really great lore building character.
Yeah, kind of a mother hen for the Mandalorians.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And talking about it, has he gotten his signet yet? And so I'm sure that's going to play in later on because he hasn't picked one yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really been a joy to get so much Mandalorian culture in this, and I mean, I hope they don't unmask him too quickly because I mean, I think you could run with this masked character for a long time.
I hope they never do it. Honestly.
Yeah. Same. I mean, Boba Fett did fine. We've never seen his face, or well, no, that's not true. We now have seen his face. I'm sorry, but in the '90s, we had never seen his face.
We haven't seen his. We've seen his father's adult face, but we haven't seen Boba Fett's adult face.
Right.
So.
We've seen his kid face, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there were hints in chapter 4, if you want to move on to that, of the potential or why he's always wearing the helmet. And it seemed like there was some potential to that he would take it off in front of somebody. But that, of course, didn't happen. Chapter 4, we got Cara Dune. I know some people are already clamoring for her to have her own show. I'm totally on board with that. I thought her character was instantly believable, fit. It's so cool to see like a rebel special forces character and somebody who, frankly, she insults the New Republic instantly. It's saying it's like, no, they became something I'm not into, and I dug that a lot. And of course, the big winner I think in this episode is when you get the reveal of the ATST. Which was so well done, and I love that they said ATST and not Imperial Walker. Because again, that's more of that technical language that we don't get too often in some aspects of Star Wars. I thought giving it almost like the red eyes, whereas the windshields, I thought that made it like sufficiently creepy. That was very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a simple episode, kind of a hero saves the village kind of story.
Yeah,
but it worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not being negative, but this was my least favorite episode of the series so far. And it's only because we've seen Star Wars and Dave Filoni do the Seven Samurai story before.
Yes,
right. Because they've done it in Clone Wars. I think they even did it kind of in Rebels. Mm-hmm. And so it did feel like for somebody who, is as big into Star Wars as we are, it did feel like a little bit of a retread. And that was the only problem I had with it. Technically, there's nothing wrong with this episode.
Yeah, I could see that. I agree. It is something. That's why I say it's a story we've seen a million times.
Right.
Hero saving a little village,
and for me, that it was just. I mean, it wasn't boring, but it was a little. It wasn't as it didn't have any surprises like we had in previous episode.
Sure. I mean, I think, but again, it was perfect as far as like the technicals go.
Right.
Again, Bryce Dallas Howard did a great job directing the episode. The acting was top notch.
Yeah, the acting was great. Everything, like I said, technically everything is great about it. To me, the story fell a little flat, but for other people who haven't watched as much Star Wars in this, they probably feel differently, and I can completely understand that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's good we got it out of the way early. if we're gonna get this kind of story, well, all right, let's do that. So,
I mean, like, I guess I was gonna say, like, we had a term for back in the day for reviewing Rebels and Clone Wars we would term this as a filler episode.
Yeah. Even though it was for an introduction to Cara Dune, I thought it worked.
Yes,
because that's clearly a character we're going to get more of, and it did do a good job of bringing her into the fold.
Right.
So we'll get to chapter 5, but then I think it's pretty safe to say chapter 6 is probably going to be a Space Whales episode, and we'll no.
You know what? I wouldn't mind, because last time we saw Space Whales, we had Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn. So clearly they're surrounding important people and events in the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
Well, I can see Baby Yoda, like, bringing in a Purgle or something.
My God, yes. Please. Okay, I'm on board. Do it.
Yeah. Which, we didn't bring that up. I mean, one of the important things in chapter 2, of course, was getting to see Baby Yoda with Force powers. And I mean, it wasn't a surprise. I think we were all just kind of waiting for it to happen. But that was an important moment to illustrate. Is that, yes, absolutely, this thing has, wild Force powers. Right. And so that was the importance, maybe, really, of chapter 2 to get that across.
And in episode 3, they kind of leave the hint that what they're after in the child is the midichlorians.
Yeah, which I'll tell you.
Yeah, we don't know who the client is yet, and what they want them for, but that seems to be what they were after.
Yeah, if this show has the sack to say the word midichlorians, I will give it so much credit. Like, I'll praise this show till I die if they will say the word midichlorians.
Yeah.
I want Disney to fucking admit it, that's a thing. And go ahead.
They're not gonna do it in episode 9.
No. If they did, even if the movie sucked, I would give JJ so much credit for. It's like, thank you for admitting that we got our. Go ahead.
He won't do it because he doesn't have the sack.
No. He's this movie's gonna be very safe, but I'm okay with that because, again, Mandalorian has been so goddamn good. So beyond what I could have imagined, I did not expect a show to be this great. In chapter 5, just kept the train running. And we end up on Tatooine after an excellent starfighter sequence or star battle sequence. I mean, a very, very tight, well done one with a nice, clever. In fact, I think they lifted this right from Battlestar Galactica, because basically the Mandalorian pulls off, okay, cut the engines and get the guy in front of you.
Right.
And that's
Top Gun.
Yeah, or Top Gun. But I mean, in the 78 Galactica, that's a classic Apollo move for him to get Cylons in front of him. And I was like, okay, good. Let's have Star Wars copy Galactica for a little bit, okay? And that was, that's an old rivalry from the 70s. But anyway, that was nice. That was a great, very well done scene. And then we end up on Tatooine, and then we end up with, the callbacks, because we end up right in the cantina from A New Hope. And you even have a guy basically sitting in Han Solo's chair, like Han Solo of all things. I mean, that was kind of a gutsy move, I thought, to put him in like that. This is a great episode. We already talked about some of the things that occur in it. Dave Filoni was directing this one as well. Clearly, he knows his Star Wars, because everything just hit in this. The Ming-Na Wen, she was fantastic as her character in this. I'm pretty sure we're not done with her, even though the episode suggests that we are. In fact,
no, it seems to me suggest otherwise, that we're definitely not done with her. Let's go. Here again. Let's speculate responsibly. But who do you think that was?
Oh, I think it was Cat Bane. I think it was Cat.
Do
Bane.
you really? Okay. Yeah. I was thinking maybe it was Carl Weathers.
Oh, that makes more sense. So I went to a flight of fancy, but yeah, it probably is Carl Weathers, but that would have been, it'd be awesome if it was fucking Cad Bane.
Yeah.
If we were going to get a live action Cad Bane, I mean, you know, I'm just going to have to like carry a toilet with me whenever I watch the show because I'm going to be shitting myself right and left. It's like, wait, we got Cad Bane? But Ming-Na Wen was awesome. Yeah, it's pretty clear she's not gone, and that's great. I thought the character they had playing, that was running the docking port there, she was.
That was the same docking port that Han Solo used too, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think it was 94. It was 35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I looked out for that, and I wondered if they were like even going to show Bay 94, and I didn't see it. But regardless, but that was really cool to like have her there. And interesting that the Mandalorian said no droids, don't have droids work on my stuff, which I'm sure we're going to find out what the deal is around that at some point. Maybe the Mandalorians just don't trust.
Well, it might be just because they show flashbacks of him from the Clone Wars and him nearly getting killed by battle droids. So maybe he just has a thing with droids.
Just him.
Would be understandable if they killed your parents and nearly killed you. And
yeah. We didn't talk about that in Chapter 1, but the IG droid in that was hilarious. And really, really cool, which we expected it to be. I mean, it was an IG-88, but it was an IG droid, and that worked. That turned out very, very well. But anyway, with Chapter 5, we're on Tatooine. We get a very funny moment with the Tusken Raiders, and I loved that he comes right out and says, it's like, who is it? The bounty hunter that he's working with says, yeah, the locals warned me about these sand people. And the Mandalorian says, well, to them, they're the locals and you're the invaders. And I thought that was so, I was like, fuck yeah, man. There's so much to love in this. I mean, give me some highlights with Chapter 5 here.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really funny that they kind of, that scene was kind of a callback even to Episode 4, because where you have Luke looking through the binoculars at the Tusken Raiders, and then as soon as he takes him down, there's a Tusken Raider right in front of him.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. Like I said, the one little thing that just kind of like bothered me a little bit is that the mask that the Tusken Raiders were using in this episode kind of did look a little off the shelf and not as as quality as to what we see in the movies.
Right.
So that's
it wasn't dirty enough, wasn't dusty enough.
Well, I mean, and like their mouthpieces didn't actually look like usually you could see like there's like a visible like hole through the mouthpiece, whereas these it almost kind of looked like a rubber mask sort of thing. So I was a little disappointed that. I hope they and I understand why. I mean, this is an expensive show, and it was just for a couple of seconds. So maybe they didn't want to, pull out the Tusken mavs they had in the archives to use for this scene. But, if you have that stuff available, like, they should have used it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's amazing. These are the only nitpicks we have for this.
Right. I mean, this is...
You're talking to a couple of... Right.
Yeah.
We're a couple of professionals. No, right. I mean, we're a couple of professional Star Wars skewers here, and I mean, it's tough to like find these things,
right?
But that's what makes it so great. What else you got for Chapter 5 that you're really enjoying?
Just I never get sick of Tatooine.
Yeah.
Every time we see it, and I was just so jazzed that like we got that kind of shot of seeing Tatooine as he's flying in, and it looks very much like the scene from Episode 4 where, Luke and Obi-Wan are standing over that cliff and they're looking down at Tatooine. And, Obi-Wan says that famous line about, you'll never find a more, wretched hive of scum and villainy. So it was great to see that kind of shot of the city again. And here again, this felt like the first episode where they did, like I said, open up the lens and, kind of get some wider shots and have some vistas and stuff. So that was really nice.
Yeah, the swoop bike riding was nice.
And that felt like it was right out of Shadows of the Empire.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and so a lot of these designs, actually, I've been seeing through a lot of different Star Wars content lately where I see a lot of designs from Shadows of the Empire coming in. We might talk a little bit about those more later. But yeah, the swoop bikes, that was great. That was one of the first things where I saw it and I was like, okay, yeah, fan film would have a hard time with that one, with looking that good. And this episode overall is where it really started to expand in scope, which if that's, kind of a narrative play on their part to slowly expand the universe, that's fine. I mean, that's what Rebels did. Rebels started off on Lothal and then, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, as you went along. So anyway, that's fine if that's how they want to rock with this. Anything else big from Chapter 5 that you want to bring up?
I would love to know what starfighter that guy was flying at the beginning of the episode. I'm trying to look that up now. And but it kind of looked like a modified Z-95.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't really recognize it either. I really need to go through every one of these episodes again. I mean, I'll rewatch the whole thing once all 8 episodes are out.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it might be episode 7 that Disney is going to do a early release for it on the 18th on Wednesday, because normally these shows have been coming out every Friday.
Yeah, they are. And there's also supposed to be with it a kind of a special preview of episode 9.
Right. So they're saying there's going to be some kind of connection between whatever's in episode 7 and episode 9. And so that's why they're doing it. Go ahead.
I don't know how much stock I put in that, but I mean,
we'll see. Maybe they're just putting it out early so that moviegoers can go to the movies, the rest of those days.
Right. I think that's just marketing.
Sure. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a Deborah Chow episode, so if I get it early, I'll take it.
Right.
So, yeah, man, it's been, and I don't get how, like, every episode has had so, especially compared to the sequel trilogy, we're getting so many like aliens and things from previous canon, from the original trilogy and from the prequels. Like, I get it that Dave Filoni's there, but why isn't it a mandate to have a lot of this stuff, in the sequel trilogy? I'm still really baffled by that, and I can't help but think. Go ahead.
I have a feeling that there was somebody put down a mandate, at least in episode 8, that there was to be no classic creatures. In fact, if you go back and look at the Last Jedi art book, and you go through and you look at the concept art for the Canto Bight scenes, and you see Twi'leks, you see Tranchodans. Yeah. None of those end up in that scene. So there's somebody made the decision that no classic aliens.
Yeah. And I think it was true in episode 7 as well. With JJ, I get it, because I think JJ pulls this stuff all the time with whatever he gets involved in, where he wants some kind of marketing rights. But yeah, and it's so noticeable, and I think it's part of the magic of The Mandalorian is that there's so much stuff from previous entries in Star Wars, from classic entries in Star Wars, that it makes it feel far more like Star Wars than anything else going right now.
Right. I mean, just especially in this episode, even the scenes where the Mandalorian is walking up to the Mos Eisley Cantina, and you still see some of the same looking junk that was sitting outside the cantina that was in episode 4.
Right.
And that kind of attention to detail is what makes it so Star Wars.
Yeah, or even like you mentioned, who's the bartender at the cantina? Right,
yeah, the bartender looks like the same droid that was Jabba was using as a torture droid in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you instantly see these things, you instantly recognize them and know them. And even if you're not, Star Wars sweaties like Rob and I, you probably have it in your subconscious or you're in your unconscious, of, okay, I've seen that before in Star Wars. And it's amazing how replete it is with all that, and how, again, just about everything else a lot of the movies being done other than Rogue One, you get none of that. And it's just, it does stand out that you don't get any of that. And I hope this is a trend. This is leading a trend to, reversing that. So anyway, I mean, bottom line, 5 episodes deep, this is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen in my life, in almost 40 years of my life. This is just absolutely some of the best. I'm so pleased. I can't wait for the next 3 episodes. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit. I have not been that excited about a TV show in a very, very long time. But this one's got me. I mean, it's got me good. So, Rob, I mean, what else you got you want to bring up about The Mandalorian?
I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I barely have the words to describe how much I love this show.
Yeah.
And it really is. I was kind of joking about it when we first started, but no, really, this show is saving Star Wars.
Yeah.
This gives me hope for the long-term future of the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a part of me does think that basically Disney was willing to not play it safe, because I feel like they play it safe all the time with Marvel and whatever else. But they knew this is their heavy hitter for their new network. It has to, you've got to get people talking. They had to do things. And the only way you can really get people talking is if you do really shocking and not safe stuff. You got to take risks. And for whatever reason, they let Favreau and Filoni take risks, and here it is, and it's great,
Yeah.
And
yeah. And it's doing gangbusters. And know, like we were talking about the merchandising earlier, I hope, they sell 1 million Baby Yodas.
Please. Yeah.
I really do, because all that's going to say is that, Dave Filoni's involvement in the franchise needs to be further elevated.
Yeah, it just cements him. Yep.
Right, exactly. Don't just give him his own movie, give him his own trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and next year, we're supposed to get the announcement of what the next Star Wars movie is going to be, which is coming out in 2022. I'm open to the speculation that they're going to announce that it's Filoni, that it's going to be his theatrical debut.
Yeah.
In 2022. I'm very open to that, and I think we'd both applaud it.
Right.
And he's showing what he's got right here. So
and it's I mean, they're even so I don't know if you heard about this, but what do you think about Rian Johnson saying that he wants to direct an episode of The Mandalorian?
Did he say that?
Yes.
I don't want him to touch anything Star Wars.
I agree with you. But that just goes to show like how good the show is that, the guy who does the big motion pictures wants to come down and do a Star Wars TV show, because he obviously didn't pull it off the first time.
No, he failed. I mean, he failed hard. I mean, speaking of cementing, let me just say this quick, because, episode 9, which, we're going to review that in the next episode of TIE Fighter Renegades, because it'll be out by then. I mean, I was looking more into this with J.J. Abrams, and because right now I wouldn't want him to touch an episode of The Mandalorian either. Like, not for a second. Okay?
No. I hope he's done with Star Wars after this. Right.
He's never had the opportunity to really try to with an exit strategy. Like, I mean, he's never been able to really put an end to anything, for whatever reason that happens to be. This is going to be interesting, because if episode 9 actually works, if it's in any way, like, if you can put the word really and good together when talking about episode 9, this is going to be very much a proving ground for him. I know Rian Johnson, people are saying, oh, Knives Out is fucking great. Well, good for you, but that doesn't mean that he can handle Star Wars. Go ahead.
Can I wasn't going to bring this up, but this has to be the most overhyped hit movie in the history of Hollywood.
Yep.
I mean, I'm so tired of hearing about Knives Out every single day on Twitter, on Reddit, everywhere you go. It's in my Google News feed every single day. I am so sick of hearing about this movie. This is one of those movies where the marketing is so overboard and so onerous that I swear, I don't care how good this movie is, I'm never going to watch it.
Yeah, I have no plan on ever seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sick of hearing about it.
Yeah, I think Hollywood is very incestuous. We get lucky when we get guys like Filoni that somehow, get in there. And I think this is Hollywood, like, protecting its own, or trying to protect its own.
Absolutely.
they're trying to repair the damage that happened to Rian Johnson.
Yeah, well, they're even like I've seen all these articles about how the backlash to the Last Jedi gave him inspiration for this movie and what. I don't care. You know what? Please stop telling me about it because I don't care.
Yeah, nah, he fucked things up. I hope they never let him to touch the Mandalorian. I mean, fortunately, if they did, it's only 30 minutes we'd have to deal with, but no way. Well, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're only getting 8 episodes a season, I'm not willing to see that much, potentially good Star Wars content to put it in his hands to fuck it up.
Yeah, well, I'm worried he's gonna. I mean, if we gave it to him, the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda would probably be dead, and there wouldn't be a show left.
Right?
He's like, oh no, this is really all. It's always been about Cara Dune. It's like, okay, no, we love Cara Dune. Stop.
And he'd be like, oh no, but next season you could have Force Ghost Baby Yoda. No, fuck you, stop it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, so yeah, no. And actually, this speaks real quick. This speaks to a problem in new Star Wars that I've been having for a while. They off all of these characters, like, and I don't. It's rare that in any book or comic or movie that any of the new characters get to survive, and we really don't get to grow with any of these characters. And part of it is because a lot of these stories are taking place in between shit, But it's I really am annoyed by that. So let's let some people live for a while.
Well, I mean,
okay?
that's right. I mean, they completely squandered the opportunities they had right off from the bat from The Force Awakens, because you were never going to have, the big four get together again.
Yeah.
Luke, Leia, Chewie, and Han Solo.
Right.
That was never going to happen. Whereas I think one of the reasons that when back in the 90s, when they started making Star Wars content again with Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy and the Dark Empire comic books, the big attraction of those was that they did get back together and they did go on further adventures together.
Yeah, further adventures.
Yeah, together, not separately, not where one of them's dead or where all of them are dead.
Yeah, no,
And like I said, they completely squandered that opportunity, especially since Carrie died. I mean, what a shame.
Yeah.
What a fucking shame.
Yeah, no, Disney's going to be paying for that one for a long time. They missed a moment. I mean, to vindicate what you're saying, one of the most hated books in the old expanded universe was Courtship of Princess Leia. Why? Because Han Solo is being, well, I'll just say it, a fucking baby throughout the whole thing. And it's not the big four, being friends and doing their business, and saving the galaxy. You're absolutely right. That is what people wanted. And that's part of the agitation right now, is that's not what they're getting. But again, fortunately, The Mandalorian is taking a lot of great cues from classic Star Wars and bringing it in nice and fresh. And Filoni's just delivering on all of it. It's so wild, and so much fun to experience again. Any other comments on The Mandalorian?
No.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, folks. If you want Star Wars, here it is. You got it.
This is the way.
This is the way. I know that's the mantra, literally the mantra for the show. This is the way. No, how do we do Star Wars? This is the way.
This is the way, yeah.
This is how you do it, okay?
Future Star Wars directors, what do you need to do? Watch The Mandalorian. This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way it's done. Oh, man, it's so solid. So, with how awesome The Mandalorian is, I suppose the other half of the question is, how awesome is Disney Plus? Now, Rob, you're subscribed to this officially, right?
Yes, officially. Yeah.
Right. Same here. I talked about this on Sovryn Tech. I've talked about it on Zomia ONE Underground Q&As, and basically said that the first day. And did you get it day one, Rob?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. So the first day was a clusterfuck. I mean, servers down. I mean, try watching anything, forget it. Try even opening the app. It was, a disaster.
Yeah, thankfully I didn't have to deal with that, because even though I did get it day one, I didn't jump on it the minute it came online because I was at work. So I got to watch The Mandalorian later at night when I came home from work, and thankfully by then the issues had been ironed out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll just say it straight. I torrented the first episode, and again, folks, I was a paying customer, but to efficiently watch this, I had to go and torrent it. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that's go ahead.
I've torrented all the episodes just for, purposes of having copies myself.
Yeah, just for library purposes, as we like to say.
Exactly. Right. Archival purposes.
That's right. Yeah, same here. And so I thought that was kind of ridiculous, but I'm not really surprised that happened. I had fun complaining about it on Twitter, but let's just call it, I was having fun with it. And it just shows, I mean, the Cloud, in my opinion, is such a failure, but that's a conversation that's had on other episodes. Or on other shows. Go ahead.
And it hasn't been entirely fixed yet either, because
on
a couple of times I've tried to watch The Mandalorian the minute that it's supposed to come out at midnight.
Yeah.
And the servers just shit themselves, and it's a stuttering mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I've continued to have on multiple devices. In fact, the only device where Disney Plus works pretty much perfectly is on a Chromebook of mine, amazingly. Any other, and I don't have any iOS devices, so I can't speak for that. I'm going to imagine it works perfectly on iOS devices, because I think if there's ever problems, developers are always running to make sure that shit's working on iOS. But I cannot, in fact, right now, I could open up my main phone, and it's a phone that's no slouch. It's an Android One phone. If I go try to download something, it won't download. It actually will crash the app.
Wow.
Also, when I'm downloading, if it's like a large file, like say I was downloading Swiss Family Robinson from 1960, one of my favorite movies of all time, it'll cut off in the middle, and then it'll never just pick back up. It'll say like a lost Wi-Fi. And so the app itself has a lot of problems. Haven't had any issues with the web portal. I know that's the way you watch it most,
right.
Rob. I mean, what has been your experience as far as that, other than seeing The Mandalorian the instant it's supposed to come out?
Yeah, those are really well. The other issue I've had is that through the web portal, it seems to be stuck. I have an ultra wide monitor, so it's a little higher resolution than 1080p, but not quite 4K.
Right.
And it seems to be stuck at this 1080p resolution where I have black surrounding the entire frame. Mm-hmm.
So you're not getting 21:9, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas properly, it should fill the entire screen, because that's the aspect ratio of my monitor.
Right.
And the thing that's really perplexing about this is that I know they know how to do this, because on YouTube, all the trailers that they've released this year on the Star Wars YouTube channel have been, properly in that format where the entire, movie or trailer fills my entire screen. So I know they know how to do this. They're just not doing it with their own service for some reason.
Yeah. I think they're having a few issues as far as that goes, because another area where I ran into a problem was actually sending it to a Chromecast. And I think it defaults to 4K. There are not in the app, and this is more with the app, not the web portal, but the app, it gives you some choices on like your downloads, what quality they're going to be. Are they going to be high, standard, low? But as far as streaming, there's no controls over the quality of like the video quality, and it just wants to run to 4K. Wow. And we know for a fact that the 4K HDR that they're doing is a little bit of a trick. Like, it's not true HDR. People are complaining about that. Myself, I don't really care. I mean, I have a hard cap at 1080p. Like, that's all I need. I have no need to go any higher. I think that's as good as the human eye can bother with. So I don't give a shit about anything else.
Yeah. And I'd be fine with the 1080p as long as it filled my screen. I just don't want these damn black bars on, not only on top and below my screen, but on either side as well.
Yeah. I mean, that was the whole point of anamorphic widescreen, was to resolve that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, I mean, that's an issue. They are having problems with this, because that was the one problem with running the app on my Chromebook, was it kept it at a very small, the Android app, it kept it at a small, very small size. You have to expand it, like maximize it on your screen, then close the app. And then when it reopens, it actually works in where it takes up the entire screen. So this is definitely something that, some of the glitches and technical issues that they're running into with this. But other than that, I mean, what do you think about the content? I mean, what do you think about like what's being offered overall minus the technical issues?
Yeah, I think it's a great value for all the content they're offering.
Yeah, I mean, it's $6 a month, right?
Right, like all the classic Disney cartoons from the 90s, like DuckTales and Darkwing Duck.
Yep.
And all, Gargoyles. I mean, God, man, I wish Gargoyles would come back.
Oh, yeah, that's magic. One of my favorite shows of all time. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they have, Iron Man from the 90s. I mean, the 90s cartoon option alone, Disney and Marvel, and is an X-Men. I mean, it's so worth it. I'd pay $6 a month just for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even counting Star Wars.
Right.
Go ahead.
There's an odd admission when it comes to Star Wars, and that is that, well, for one, they don't have episode 8 yet, and understand it's because they have streaming agreements already with Netflix, and that has to expire first. But
that's true for Solo as well. Yeah.
Right. And the thing that doesn't make any sense is why isn't Resistance Season 2 on Disney Plus? Because it's their own content.
Right. And it's not like it's on some weird network. It's not on Cartoon Network. It's not with some third party. It's on Disney XD.
Right.
I agree with you. That doesn't make any sense that new episodes aren't coming out. I mean, that's another value add, right? To not have to have a cable network. That's the whole thing, right? Cord cutters, even though that's horseshit. It would be to have, the season 2 episodes come out as they go. I am impressed that there's a lot of content that was only on YouTube originally that is on here, like Forces of Destiny, the shorts for Star Wars Resistance that most people don't even know exist, that we talked about in this show. They are there. I'm impressed by that. But I mean, that reminds me too, another odd exclusion is the Star Wars show isn't on there, I don't think. And a lot of there's been a lot of little mini featurettes that they've been putting, like the evolution of a stormtrooper, which was actually really cool. It's like 6 minutes long. If anyone hasn't seen this, go to the Star Wars channel on YouTube. It's brilliant. They're talking to Doug Chang. They're talking to Dave Filoni, and it's a beautiful exploration of the evolution of the stormtrooper. It's really cool. But that's not on, like, I would just instantly mirror anything that's on fucking YouTube right onto Disney Plus. I don't know why they're not doing that.
Yeah. I was glad to see that they put Empire of Dreams on there.
Yes.
Which is a really good documentary. I hope they would put some of the other documentaries from the past, like From Star Wars to Jedi.
Yep.
That was a really good one. So I would, and where are the Ewok movies?
I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you did, because the first place I remember seeing those was on the Disney Channel.
Right.
Like 20, 30 years ago. They were the ones who had the rights to play those. And so that's kind of a weird exclusion as well. And it's not like, I don't think those are on Netflix or anything. They're just nowhere to be seen. And so what if they're legends? I mean, they were basically considered legends even, before legends was a concept.
Yeah.
But fucking put them out. I mean, and because they're a lot of fun, great for kids.
And same thing with the Droids and Ewoks cartoons.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's not, I mean, I get it that they're probably never going to put the holiday special on there. But I think it's not a complete Star Wars collection. I mean, it's close, but it's really not everything.
Right.
What was the animatics for, was it the Utapau episodes or something that they released for Clone Wars? But they weren't finished. Go ahead.
Well, the thing with that is that they are releasing that 7th season of the Clone Wars, and I would expect those episodes to be in there.
They're gonna okay.
In fact, I'm 90% sure they are.
That makes sense. All right.
Because
well then,
I've seen animatics they haven't even released that they showed at Star Wars Celebration, and I've seen scenes in the trailer that were from those.
Okay. All right. So that makes sense that they're probably just going to finish these up. And
I think the only one that I saw that they're probably not going to release is the one that they turned into the book Dark Disciple.
Right.
Because that was originally a 4-episode story that they were going to do. And pretty sure they're probably not going to do that since the book is already out.
Yeah, and folks, that's one of my. I think it's in my top three as far as Star Wars books available right now
Yeah,
in the new
at least
canon.
of the
So
new canon. Yeah,
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 yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. I wish they would make episodes of it. I mean, people forget Clone Wars didn't mind being. In fact, Ellen and I, we've been rewatching it, and there is a point where she just says, like, "This is dark," like this is really. I mean,
yeah.
it
Like the Dathomir episodes.
oh
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, get this out of your head, folks. This is the farthest thing from a kid show. As soon as you start hitting like later season 3, season 4, and certainly season 5, this is some. I mean, there's just heads getting lobbed off
yeah.
nonstop, way more than the movies ever did. I mean, I don't know what the fuck you'd rate these, half these episodes. It was
Yeah.
so grown up.
I mean, the like I said, the Dathomir episodes is practically a zombie horror movie.
Oh fuck yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's great. Like it's also the writing is just solid and and the battle sequence you get like in season 5 between Savage Opress, uh, Maul
Palpatine.
and Palpatine
Oh yeah,
that's some of the best lightsaber action you'll ever see in your life. It was so crazy. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're not getting the rest of that Clone Wars content until February of 2020. I think is the release for that. But that's just going to take this whole thing to another level. I mean, that's so exciting.
yeah. It is really it's a reason to keep the subscription and because that's going to be worth it. I know it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, there will be a month where I guess we're not really going to get any new Star Wars content on Disney Plus, but it'll be curious to see how quickly they keep rolling stuff out on Disney Plus as far as new Star Wars content, because Mandalorian wraps up end of the month
Right.
of December, and then again we have to wait until February for which doesn't matter because you can go to theaters and see Rise of Skywalker a few times if it actually ends up being a good movie.
And I think that's really the plan is they want to give the movie a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes all
because
sense.
it's gonna need all the help it can get.
Yeah, we cannot have any distractions, folks. I mean, because if Mandalorian was running, people would be watching that, or at the same time, people are like, no, I'm just going to stay home and watch great Star Wars instead of go see that. But anyway, so yeah, I agree. Yeah, no distractions. But yeah, so Disney Plus overall, I mean, it has plenty of technical issues, but the proposition, what's there, the content is so compelling. It's a no-brainer, I think, to purchase it and to have it. I mean, when I can download the episodes, it is really fucking nice to just have Star Wars always at the ready. And there's lots of other great stuff on there. I mean, a lot of the classic Disney movies, like I said, Swiss Family Robinson. I mean, there's a lot missing, but there's a lot there that's just real gold. That is worth getting access to in some way. I mean, in some of these movies, like I'd buy them on Blu-ray, but the Blu-rays would cost me, almost a year's subscription to Disney Plus because some of them are so rare. So, yeah, I think it's all right. But any other thoughts on Disney Plus, Rob?
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, they do have some 20th Century Fox content in there, but there's a lot that's missing. And the one thing that concerns me is that, there's been some rumors about saying that a lot of this stuff from 20th Century Fox, stuff like the Alien movies, is going into the Disney Vault, which I hope isn't the case. And I hope eventually they put up on the service.
Yeah, that would be a problem. It's funny. The Alien series is a great one to bring up, and I hadn't really thought about the fact that Disney does own that now.
Yeah.
There have been attempts in the 90s. What was it, like Operation Alien or something, where they were trying to make a kids cartoon. Yeah. There was a toy line and everything, right?
Right. That's what got us. They did. There was a company that their intention wasn't to make the cartoon, but they sort of made short animated sequences for the toy line as commercials.
Right.
But they were never like fully developed episodes. But that was kind of like it was intended to be the launch pad for, an animated series of aliens, colonial marines.
Yeah. I am curious. I mean, I'd love to see if Disney could right the ship And that could really become a major third franchise for Disney to have. Because I mean, right now it's basically Marvel and Star Wars. The
Right.
bulk of the people probably getting Disney Plus, they're either there for both or one or the other. Even though again, there's plenty elsewise, to have there. That could be. I would love it if they did some risky shit with like, Alien TV series of some kind. Even if they wanted to try, I mean, as fucked up as it would be, even if they wanted to try a kids cartoon with it, what the hell? Wow. Oh man. Yeah, I'm going to have to ruminate on this because I had not thought about that. Obviously, it's I know yours as well. It's one of my favorite franchises out there. So, but yeah, I don't know if Disney could handle that. Anyway, that reminds me quick too. Speaking of favorite franchises, Tron is on the service in all of its glory.
Yeah.
Including Tron Uprising, which never got a home video release. So this is really like the top way to watch this, unless of course, you do the library trick and go to the Pirate Bay or something. But anyway,
right.
But this is how to get it, and that's another one where I hope that they decide to take some risks and run with it. Maybe since Disney Plus is really, I mean, financially, it's a wild success right now. And I don't think that's going to stop. Right. So, any other thoughts there, Rob?
Well, like I said, there have been rumors rumbling about a possible return of Gargoyles because I know the creative people behind that are definitely interested in it happening. I hope it's the same case with Tron. The rumors for the last couple of years have been since Disney acquired Star Wars, they kind of put Tron on the back burner because they felt they couldn't really, do two heavy science fiction series at once. Yeah. But it's just, kind of like with Alien, pun intended, it's a totally different beast than Star Wars.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really think they could. Science fiction is I would argue that science fiction is the hottest genre of any.
Yes.
In entertainment.
Yes. And it's certainly where people are willing to put their money. Yeah.
Yeah. So to have two or even three major science fiction franchises coming out of the same studio, I don't think they're going to be eating into their own profits doing this. I think that's just going to be more money for them overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be smart for them to, I mean, it's just creating their own competition, basically Disney Plus would become like a parent company, as it were, with entertainment. And I would totally play off of, well, we have people that like Marvel, we have people like Star Wars, people like Alien, people that like Tron, and have those fan bases, have some internal competition and have those fan bases almost at each other's throat in a hopefully kind way. But I mean, that would be great. I mean, nothing gets people, I'm not saying it's a good thing. Okay. But in our modern world, nothing gets people more excited than, some classic, well, my team's better than your team. And I think you could pull that off with some of these franchises. And that would be really, really interesting to do that within like your own app. I mean, yeah. So Disney Plus, I'd say overall, a winner. There's some things that they can do, some things they certainly need to work on, but overall, certainly for the asking price of $6 a month. I mean, well worth it, especially if you are a Star Wars fan. And I assume you are, since you're listening to this, but, anyway, and hopefully that vault thing. Let's not get into the artificial scarcity horseshit. That just there's no need for that.
Yeah, it makes no sense in the age of streaming services.
Right, because you're just going to lose people because people will just go and pirate the movies,
right.
Or whatever. Like you really will lose money if you try and pull that stuff today. It doesn't work that way anymore.
No.
So anyway, actually, that was so crazy. I remember, when they would have commercials that, okay, as soon as December 18th or something hits, Dumbo's not going to be in stores anymore. Right. And you're not going to be able to buy the VHS anymore. And it's like, well, wait a minute. There's no way that Walmart just sold out of every fucking copy of the VHS. You took them all back. Where did all those movies go? I mean, it was always a dumb idea. I guess people fell for it, though. I don't know. So, well, anyway, hopefully not any longer. Speaking of something that is, I guess we'll find out whether or not we think that this is dumb. Let's shift gears back to we're not shifting gears, we've been reviewing this whole episode, but let's get into some more reviews. And that is the show that is not on Disney Plus, and that being season 2 of Star Wars Resistance, as we mentioned earlier. This is, of course, we do know season 2 is the final season. We talked about that in the last episode of TIE Fighter Renegades. We have, let's see, episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 that we are up to as of this recording. Have you felt, Rob, at all that this season, in the past few episodes, has this picked up more? Because, I mean, we were pretty harsh over the first 4 episodes of season 2, and rightfully so. Do you feel like this has picked up at all? Anything you're getting that you were wanting out of it?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
it's picked up, but it feels like they're doing the work that they should have done in season 1.
Aha! Tell me more.
You know, like the most recent episode where they had the racers go to that casino.
Oh, run by the Hutt.
Yeah, run by the Hutt. I mean, this is the kind of exposure we should have had to the aces in the first season, and it feels like they're doing groundwork to set up the aces this late in the game, and we know this is going to be the last season. So, I mean, it's good, but it's almost kind of like too little, too late.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of. Is it Isla? She sounds Russian.
Yeah.
She's one of the aces, the blonde, and she sounds Russian. I think it's Isla or whatever. Yeah. She, like, finally we get 2 episodes where she has even words, to say. I agree. We're finally starting to get something with the aces, and it like you said, I agree. Also, this is all stuff that should have been in season 1. And now it feels slightly out of place, because
exactly.
They're running from the First Order now, like the idea of racing. I mean, they came up with a good idea to get into a race, right? Because they need money and whatever else. But it does seem very, very out of place, or just in the wrong order. But yeah, I mean, was there anything else that you felt like that was helping this pick up at all?
I did really enjoy Relic Raiders. In fact, that might be the best episode in the entire series thus far.
Yeah, that's the one where they went into the Sith temple, kind of like we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that was, I enjoyed that episode as well. Again, part of the reason being, at least for me, was that it was expanding the galaxy, and giving us history. And which is, and we did learn something, like we mentioned earlier in this episode, the idea that, I mean, we always knew that the Jedi temple was built on top of a Sith shrine, but now, actually, this is something that's very commonplace. The Jedi do it often, and it's part of their tradition and practice, which I thought was very interesting. What else you got on that one? On the Relic Raiders?
Well, I mean, like they introduced the new character of was it Mika? And, yeah, and she seemed like a cool character, but we haven't seen her again since. And granted, there's only been 2 more episodes, following that one, but we've only got like 4 left, 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think it's 4 left. Yeah. I think it's only a 13 episode season.
I mean, I hope we get to see her again because I like the character.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this isn't, it's funny. I don't feel like it's expanding much on how the First Order operates. I mean, there's no, the area that it should be expanding on, it really doesn't touch. And this is really, now we do have books and we're going to cover them. We do have books now that, and comic books that are covering the post Last Jedi era of Star Wars, but this is really all we've got that's very much post Last Jedi, and you would kind of hope for a little more connection. Go ahead.
This is the problem overall with the sequel trilogy is really, I mean, I don't know what the point of the First Order is other than, we're bad and we're trying to be, worse than the Empire was.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
I just it's all very kind of it's rehashy,
Yeah. Well, it's a problem that modern entertainment has. We have shitty villains. Nobody takes time to develop villains. This is true in every franchise. I don't care if a movie makes billions of dollars, and they do. I don't care if they make billions of dollars like Marvel. That is no guarantee that actually that's great writing in any sense. Because, again, I mean, these villains are totally two-dimensional, or one-dimensional at that, and basically meaningless. I mean, I think for episode 9, JJ pretty much had to bring back Palpatine, because there is no villain that has any real development in Star Wars since Disney took over. You had to pull from Star Wars' history to have a villain that had any kind of weight, to them. And that's a shame, because Resistance would have been a great opportunity to spend time developing the villains, because they're relying upon tropes with the heroes, and that's fine. Like, that's okay, especially for a kid show. I get that. Okay, go with what's simple. But then you could spend, your 23 minutes diving more into the villains, and, we've basically got nothing. Very little. Well, no, there wouldn't be Phasma, right? So because this is post Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
It was good when they brought in Phasma a bit more, but even this Commander Pyre guy, the gal who's the head of First Order Intelligence, just not getting much. And it doesn't have to be deep, but they're not even going ankle deep. And that's what is really a pity about this.
Well, it might just be a comment, like you said. I don't want to get too political, but it's almost like maybe these people just don't want to think too much about what fascists are like.
Yeah, yeah. There's a video on YouTube where a gal does a breakdown of basically fascism in Star Wars. And it's a pretty good breakdown. She basically says that, Disney really doesn't want to do that. They just want to use the imagery, and they don't want to go that deep. And I can kind of understand why. And we might actually get into a little bit of a conversation about that, because we got to talk about that Twitter, that Twitter battle, that Twitter spat. I don't know what we want to call it, that you had with
That's
somebody.
A fair description. Yeah.
Yeah. With somebody involved with EA. And well, anyway, I think that's a thing. But what's weird about that is that Resistance had no problem getting in, including within these episodes that we're reviewing right now. They had no problem getting into a very, very political and philosophical issue, because there's the episode before Relic Raiders, which was From Beneath. And in that, we get where we go to Flix's homeworld, that bird guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about drilling for oil in shale, even though it's the Star Wars versions of whatever that is. And they end up waking up this giant beast. Very similar notes to what we dealt with in the Clone Wars when the Zillo Beast became a thing with the Dugs. Right.
Right.
But in that, go ahead.
That's representative of what people perceive as an internal evil in our society that hasn't been entirely addressed, which is corporatism and basically ecological concerns of disregarding the ecology, and exploiting the natural resources that we have at the expense of literally everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's addressing sort of internal issues, whereas fascism is always viewed as an external thing. And fascists are only exist for being punched, and that's what Star Wars does. Is it punches fascists, and people like that apparently. Don't think about it too much. Nazis are for punching. That's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is. I mean, that is a great assessment. Of it. I find it interesting that it's a little on the nose, even for kids, I think, even to go into the ecological stuff. And I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that it very much felt heavy-handed, where these bird creatures are, these sentient creatures on, what is it, Dragor 3 or whatever the hell the planet was, it's oh no, it's not a problem. Oh, it's not a problem. I mean, it was a little too blatant, I felt like. Even though, again, I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying it was a little too blatant, and I'm surprised that they'll go there. But you raise a great point as to why maybe they won't go into deeper philosophies of authoritarianism. Of course, I mean, we could get into a big conversation about that, because really all authoritarians, any kind of person above you that makes decisions, basically is fascism. But well, anyway.
Yeah. I have a feeling we will get into that later.
Yeah, we will. So, yeah, boy, yeah, this is so much gold. But anyway, yeah, Resistance. I mean, it's fine. It's fair, Star Wars fair, but it just. Frankly, I'm glad that they're ending it after 2 seasons because they missed every opportunity that they've had to make it something even remotely special. What would you say, Rob?
It's really good that earlier you brought up the point of the Clone Wars not being a kids show, because like with the Clone Wars and Rebels, if somebody said those were kids shows, I would have solid arguments to say why they aren't. Right. Resistance, if somebody called this a kids show, I wouldn't argue with them.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. I mean, it just straight up is. And you know what? And maybe we'll get it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it would be an instant win to get a lot of people watching this if they would just have Rey show up for a minute, because everybody is so excited about, or apparently people are so excited about that character. That's about the only thing I think that could make this show like very exciting is if they somehow did that. It's been great when they've brought Poe Dameron on.
Right.
And it fit. There was a narrative fit. I don't know what the narrative fit would be to bring in Rey, but I think that's something they'd have to do. But I don't know that we're going to get that.
We will see. I mean, there's only 4 episodes left. There's a lot of things that we feel that are unresolved that more than likely not all of those things will be addressed within that time period.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, anyway, we can move on from that and actually right into something that also happens to have Resistance in the title. And that is probably the major novel for the lead up to Rise of Skywalker. And that is Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse. And this came out, was this early November? I think that this ended up coming out.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you read this, Rob. I read this. You know what? Take lead. What did you think of Resistance Reborn?
Kind of like the way I felt about Solo. It was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of this book other than to sort of name drop Star Wars characters from the past.
Right.
And even the way they did it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Mm-hmm. Where they kind of like they telegraph that they're going to go find Wedge and reintroduce that character.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole sequence that's like, I don't know, maybe a third or even halfway into the book where Leia goes to Ryloth to find support there. And they have this long drawn out scene where they're trying to like sort of like be really coy and secretive about who this person she's meeting up with. And the scene just drags on, and you're like, just come on already and tell me who it is.
Yeah.
And then they finally end up revealing that it's this character, Yendor. And I'll be honest with you, I had to go look him up on Wikipedia to remember who he was. Mm-hmm. And he's just, I mean, granted, he is one of Claudia Gray's characters, but I don't remember him being all that important.
Right, wasn't that big of a
deal. The amount of time the author invested into setting up and revealing this character, it was just like really out of proportion with how important this character was.
Yeah, if it was Hera, we would be like, oh, okay,
yeah, right. Yeah,
and that's who I was expecting and I was hoping for,
right?
Because Hera, much like Leia herself, brings just brings everything up to 11.
Right, but I knew it wasn't Hera because it was obviously a male character, and I'm like, wait a minute, is Cham still alive? How old is he at this point? How can it be Cham? How can he still be alive? And obviously it wasn't, but like that was going through my mind at the time.
Right. I mean, then that basically the Syndulas, either Cham or Hera are about the only 2 major Ryloth characters or characters on Ryloth that you could, because they're Twi'lek, right? That you could possibly, that could live up to any kind of worthwhile hype.
Right.
I think that's a great point to bring up. I mean, the bulk of the action here in this, I agree with you. Everything, I mean, the writing's fine. It's serviceable, but there's just nothing going on. You
Yeah.
know, other than and here's the big thing for me is, I mean, I like that we got to spend some time with Wedge and with the mother there of
Yeah.
Snap, the
Nora
Wexley,
Wexley. Yeah.
Nora Wexley, yep, and that was great. But you get the moment in this book when Wedge finds out that Luke died, and I'm like, why is this in a novel? This should have
Yeah.
totally been in a movie. Because I mean, if anybody is going to feel it over, feel something for Luke, it sure as fuck is going to be Wedge.
Right.
That was a missed opportunity. I mean, like, I would have shown that somehow in episode 9 to get some feeling. I actually, you and I talked about it previously earlier last month, and we are like, well, this is just like how, why didn't we get Han's funeral on screen?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And this probably lends to the fact that, yeah, we're not going to get, I mean, and I get it. They're on the run from Crate and everything, of course, and that's where this book takes place, after Crate. But, we're not going to get a funeral I don't think we're going to get a funeral for any of these characters. And what a damn shame, because one of the nice things that I think why people are it's so memorable, Qui-Gon Jinn is such a memorable character, is because we did get some degree of closure with at least his physical life. And of course, then he continued on after that. But we did get closure in episode 1. We got a funeral, and we got a funeral for Padme. Fuck, can I get a funeral for like some of the greatest cinematic characters of all time? What a shame.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like even in A New Hope, like you didn't get a funeral for Obi-Wan, but they acknowledged the death and they, spent time mourning.
Yes. Yeah. You had that great moment where Luke is sitting there. Leia's got her arm around him. And he says, I can't believe he's gone. I mean, give us something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Not cool. I was glad that moment happened, and I felt the emotional punch, but all I wanted was for it to be on screen when it happened. So anyway, what else do you have with this book?
Yeah, here again, I don't understand what the point of this book was. It didn't really leave me with the feeling that the plot had progressed even by a smidgen. I feel like the Resistance is pretty much still in the same place that we left them at the end of The Last Jedi.
Yeah. Still trying to, get in their friends and everything like that.
Right.
Yeah, and you're right about the name drop book, because I actually like that Vi got mentioned in this.
Yes,
I did appreciate that, which we really enjoyed. The Black Spire book that she was the major part of. What great character! It was nice to see her get referenced at least. But they did that right, because not everybody's going to remember Vi, and they just like dropped her once, saying hopefully she's getting a good base going on Batu, and that's how you do it.
Right.
Anyway, keep going if you had more.
No, that's pretty much my summation of the book is that it felt very unnecessary, other than to, like I said, name drop some of these characters from Star Wars history. I wish they had progressed things a little. I wish there was more of a point to this book.
Yeah, and even just some undercurrent of a villain, of what you can expect to come up in episode 9 would have been great, because Star Wars has a history of this. Like with the prequels, where you had The Approaching Storm was the book before episode 2. There was the book that was before The Phantom Menace. I can't remember it, but they had all of these prequel, or like books that would be prequels to the prequels, that would lead right up to them, and they would give you hints of the evil coming. And this did nothing as far as that goes, and it would have been welcome for it to happen.
All the arguments we made in the previous segment about the First Order and Resistance apply to this book.
Yes, agreed. Also true, I think we can shift to, I'm going to do this a little out of order, but to a comic book, which was it 4 issues of Star Wars Allegiance? The trade paperback's already out. But this is also part of the journey to the Rise of Skywalker, which they got to just stop doing that whole thing. They've done it for every sequel trilogy movie, and everything has been basically pointless. The only movie that's had a great prequel content or like prequel book was really Rogue One with Catalyst. Catalyst was a fantastic book, and of course Rogue One was a fantastic movie, so maybe that's the difference. But
well, I mean, I do think that the short stories in the Journey to the Force Awakens book was not too bad, where you had stories about Finn and Rey. I thought those were decent. In fact, I mean, to date, I think the short story about Rey in that book may be the best story about Rey in the entire sequel trilogy, including the movies.
I agree. Same with Finn, where you find out
Yes.
he was actually a damned good stormtrooper,
Right.
and it was really really interesting. And you kind of got shades of that in the Age of Resistance comic with Finn as well. But yeah, no, I agree. That did work, but I also feel like those short stories have been almost completely ignored as far in the canon
Oh
because
yeah.
they seem to, other than maybe that Age of Resistance comic, they seem to treat Finn like, he's the prankster, or I mean he's kind of like the court jester,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. He definitely has gotten the fifth wheel treatment in the sequel
Yes.
trilogy of the movies.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yes, exactly. So, Star Wars Allegiance is the mini series that again is part of the, and this is supposed to be just like Resistance Reborn, a very direct lead up to the movie. It is taking place after The Last Jedi. It is more of what's in Resistance Reborn, where basically Leia's going around trying to find allies, and in this one, she ends up going to Mon Cala to do so.
Yeah.
But we get to meet Admiral Akbar's son, who I'm going to guess is some kind of a character. I think he's really there. The whole purpose of this thing, I think, was to try and once again, this is a failure with dealing with funerals in Star Wars. This was trying to make the death of Akbar a little bit bigger,
Right.
because you do get that moment, and it's a poignant one. You do get that moment where they go to like this, I don't know, almost like a well of souls, it seems like, on Mon Cala, where you can remember the heroes and kind of like the, I don't know, there's a visage of Akbar there, and Leia and Akbar's son get to experience that. And it's I think they're trying to heal that wound, because a lot of people, rightfully so, complained in The Last Jedi, wait a minute, Akbar died, so unceremoniously.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that?
Yeah. Well,
And
even the
go ahead.
actor who played him was not happy about that.
Oh, damn right. And I mean, and I hate it because you get people who are saying, hey, if we're honest, Akbar isn't that big of a deal. What the fuck are you talking about? He led the fucking assault against the Death Star too. Okay, like, he is a big deal in context, and his character is so amazing looking, and just commands such presence with the way that he talks. I don't care if It's a Tarp is a million jokes old. Okay, he was a big deal, and when you had the expanded universe that he was a major part of for a long time, along with the fact that he was stooping Winter, Princess Leia's, hot as hell assistant there, or whatever, or assassin. He is much more than just the character in Return of the Jedi, so it's deserved. But I mean, and I liked what they did in Allegiance with it, but again, it was a fail.
But I
It's
mean,
overall.
that's the only thing holding this comic up, because otherwise the plot of this entire series is pretty much a retread of the storyline that they did on Mon Cala in the Clone Wars,
Yes.
where like there's this tension and between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari, and one of the Quarren ends up betraying
Right.
the Mon Calamari.
Right.
It's the same story all over again.
Which has also been retread in the Darth Vader comic, where they go
Yeah.
to Mon Cala again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
So I mean, it's really is just kind of like it's tired and
Yeah.
somewhat pointless.
yeah, I mean, and I get it. Both times that story's been retread, it has always been about getting the Mon Cala fleet. Like, okay, the rebels need it, or in this case, the resistance needs it, whatever. We need the big capital ships, right? And that's what you're really setting up. But, then don't make such a big fucking deal about it. Because I felt like this was going to be a comic that had to be something really special. I mean, you had Kylo Ren on the cover, full glory and everything. And you got a little more of Rey using the Force, which that was kind of nice.
Yeah.
But again, overall, it was just lackluster.
Yeah. The one other thing that I want to bring up about this, and I have a bone to pick with the fan community,
Okay.
because there were some people, mostly on Twitter but on YouTube as well, who made a huge stink about the artist Luke Ross tracing images of a few starships.
Yep.
And I get it. Like, Marvel Star Wars has a tracing issue, but if you're going to trace anything, like, trace the starships. That's fine. I get it. Like, like some of these like very specific designs are like hard to memorize, and just It's not a big deal. Like, to me, it's a bigger deal when they start tracing the characters' faces using still frames from the original trilogy.
Right.
Like, where were you people when Marvel was doing that? Why weren't you complaining then?
And they did it for years. Yeah.
Yeah. And now they're complaining about, and honestly, like, Luke Ross knows how to draw characters without looking at Star Wars movies. He's probably one of the best artists working on Star Wars Marvel comics.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you know that they have the talent, then let them do what they do. I mean, the part of the problem is that the guy or the people doing the Star Wars ongoing for its early years, and again, years, that they were pulling this stunt. We didn't know what their chops were. And so it becomes a very, very different situation. That's crazy for them to be complaining about that. I mean, because again, Star Wars ships are incredibly intricate. They do not have the smooth lines that like Star Trek starships do, and so on. I mean, that's a tough bill.
I mean, I'm here again. I'm not going to say that complaining about tracing is not worth complaining about. I think it is worth bringing up, but here again, it's kind of like the fact that they're so late to the game and they're complaining like. Yeah. These are people that are just like, and I get it, they're just totally obsessed with the starships. Like, but when the starships start talking and having lines of dialogue, then I'll complain about tracing. Okay. But starships don't do that.
Not yet. That time may come. Anyway. Great point to bring up. I mean, absolutely great point to bring up. Overall, this felt like so much filler. And, if Mon Calamari cruisers show up in episode 9, I'll admit it, as somebody who is a fan of like starships and everything, and who is crazy about them, I don't need to know. I just expect them, of course they're a part of it. Right. But whatever, they felt like they needed to sell some ink, I guess. I don't know. So, but we can move on from that. I mean, do you have an overall that you want to give on Allegiance, Rob?
No, like I said, I kind of have the same feelings about it that I do with the novel we just reviewed, and just sort of like material that's attached to extraneous to the sequel trilogy in general. It really just it doesn't seem to have any overall vision or point.
Yeah. And I, the other part that I hate about it, like if nothing big's going to happen and there's going to be no major hooks or anything, and there just aren't, why are you doing a 4-issue miniseries? Like just fucking sell the trade paperback, in November and be done with it.
I would have argued that this story could have been a one-shot comic.
I agree. No, I totally agree with you. Absolutely. That's what I'm kind of pissed about, is like you're drawing this out, and if you're going to draw something out, you got to have a payoff. There's no payoff. There's absolutely no payoff objectively. So, oh well. Something we've kind of been on a roller coaster in this episode. There's been some greatness, or some real greatness, with Mandalorian. We have a few things to kind of complain about, but something that came out, this is an interesting trend happening in Star Wars, I think, is that it's these books where you hear the title or you assume what it's going to be about, and you're like, this is going to be nonsense, like, whatever, this is crap. And then it actually ends up being some of the most interesting stuff being done in Star Wars, because often enough, it's pretty experimental. Yeah. And I think this would be true. And I mean, what the first case that I think of with that is, well, I'll tell you this much. You would have never expected a Lando comic to be the best comic to this day, as far as the new canon goes in Star Wars. And I think that miniseries is still the top thing going in comic books for what would you say to that, Rob?
Yeah, no, it's definitely up there in my top 5 of Star Wars comics.
Right. I mean, just great shit. The other surprise that you and I reviewed recently, which we mentioned earlier, was the Galaxy's Edge book, Black Spire, which ended up being great Star Wars fun. I mean, just total shocker. But this other one, now I don't know if you feel as strongly about it as I did. I mean, I don't feel super strong about it, but the book Force Collector by Kevin Shinnick. Now, Kevin Shinnick is apparently, I don't know his work, but apparently he's the real deal. Like, I mean, he's actually a very awarded writer. This is a young adult it fits in the young adult mold of books. Deals with a young character who has force powers. Not his force powers is basically he can touch relics and he can see like the whole history of all this shit.
Yeah.
Which
I think they call it psychometry.
Yeah. There we go. And it's I could get into a conversation around that because you're really turning the Jedi into Catholics, in my opinion, like this with all this relic worship, because that's really what it's becoming. And you even got a hint of that in Star Wars Resistance in that episode Relic Raiders, where like Kazuda messing with the thing. Anyway, that's a whole other
this interesting. This will come up again because the main character in the video game that we're going to review has the same power.
Aha. Okay. So this is becoming a thing. Okay, fine. Yeah, the Force works in mysterious ways, folks. So, but the book Force Collector, again, it deals with this character, a younger character, and he's trying to find out the history of the Jedi. This is taking place just before The Force Awakens, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's where it seems to be in the timeline, because it has to be before The Force Awakens, because the Millennium Falcon is still in Jakku.
Right, because they see that hunk of junk, as they say. And we get some First Order in this. Because you have basically a teenage boy and a teenage gal taking on the galaxy, trying to figure stuff out. We actually do go to Batuu. We get to hang out with our favorite Ithorian there. It travels around. It has scale. I was very impressed by this book. I was shocked that inside of 2 chapters, I was like, yeah, no, keep talking to me. I want to know more. I want to know what's going on. I mean, it starts off basically in high school, but it really worked. And what's impressive about it, and I've complained about this many times, what's impressive about it is that it could have easily been a book that you could have written in any setting. But because of the way that they explore the larger Star Wars galaxy in it, this is a story, even if it starts in high school and all seems very mundane, it's a story that has to exist in the Star Wars universe to work. And I loved that. Like, that impressed the fuck out of me alone. But everything else about it, I found myself really loving this book. I mean, how about you, Rob?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it too. And it is interesting that most of the surprises that we've gotten from the new Star Wars novels have come from the YA fiction department.
Yes.
Agreed. Like Lost Stars. I think even Black Spire was YA too, wasn't it?
I think you might be right about that. Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of I almost, I'm gonna make arguments for and against this, but I almost wonder if maybe the story group leash isn't as tight on the YA material than it is on the more adult fiction. But something that is interesting about this book that came up is apparently the author did have to change the story because they ended up hitting upon a plot that they were using in episode 9. Did this completely independently of anybody, and it wasn't until they had turned in their rough draft that the story group came back and had said, you have to change this because we're doing this in the movie.
Yeah. So I put the article in the show notes if people want to read about it, but Kevin Chinick, the author himself, he doesn't know he knows what he had to take out, but he doesn't know how it's related. And he says he has ideas of what it might mean for the movie. I hope he tells us what it was after the fact, once the movie comes out, because again, it was very hush hush, but yeah, he had to take that out. I got to tell you, I'm a little worried about this relic worship shit. Like this is a very crazy, in my opinion, crazily real thing in the real world, like in our world. That blows my mind, and that I think has all kinds of issues, even if you are a religious person, Christian or otherwise.
It doesn't even have to be a religious thing, because you have people that are obsessed with collecting military paraphernalia.
Yes. Well said. Well fucking said. Relic worship is in an abstract sense, I have real problems with, and I'll admit it. I'm not enjoying it being in Star Wars, even though narratively it worked really well in this book. Go ahead.
It makes sense for this character because of his force ability.
Yes.
And he's not, it's not like he's out collecting these things because he is, you know, interested in having them and reselling them and worshiping things from the past.
Mhm.
He's doing it because, you know, he actually gets something from it. He gets actual knowledge from these relics, whereas
Right.
they're not just there to sit on his shelf and for him to admire.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's amazing. Some of the stuff that he touches, he gets visions of what happened in episode 2 when Anakin is offing all of the sand people.
Yes.
Which I thought was amazing because he's saying that, and this is part of why, because he's dealing with the situation where he doesn't even know if the Jedi were ever real,
Right.
you know, but he's trying to find out. And go ahead.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because this aspect of this novel brings up, for me personally, a huge issue I have with the entire sequel trilogy. And that apparently despite, you know, Luke and Anakin basically saving the galaxy, the New Republic never bothered to set the record straight about what happened to the Jedi.
Right.
They just did not give a shit. Whereas in the expanded universe, you know, Mon Mothma was always going on about how we need the Jedi to exist in order for the galaxy to kind of like be healthy again.
Oh, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, whereas in the sequel trilogy, she doesn't talk about them at all, and apparently doesn't really give a shit whether they were around or not. And I understand wanting to have, like, you know, I actually understand and agree with having the Luke's Jedi Academy separate from the New Republic. That makes sense, and I agree with that. But at least acknowledge their contribution to the Galactic Civil War. At least acknowledge, you know, that what was done to them at the close of the Clone War was a huge injustice. But apparently they never bothered to set the record straight, and it really pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, and this was first order of business for old EU Star Wars writers. I mean, because basically the second trilogy of books we ever got was, as horrible as it was the Jedi Academy trilogy by He Who Won't Be Named. And I mean, but that's how important it was to get that established quickly, you know, and to set up, okay, you know, we got to get the Jedi cleared and we got to get them back and, you know, more or less back into the universe. That it is very strange that, and again, one of the main characters is a well-traveled member of the First Order. Like, how do they? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense that at this point, it's believed the Jedi never existed. You know?
Yeah. And it's not like an isolated thing where, like, it's just on his backward planet, because he goes traveling throughout the entire universe.
Right.
And every planet he goes to, it's the same story over and over. And like, oh yeah, the Jedi, you know, were a bunch of traitors, and they're not around anymore.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, how there wasn't like documentaries put out on the Galactic HoloNet, you know, showing how, well, you know, actually the clones turned Order 66 and went. Yeah, you're right. You're so on with that. That's an interesting point to bring up. That was never really clarified. But I mean, they do a great job with, even though that's what they're running with, they do a great job with explaining it, like saying, you know, how could one person possibly, you know, and they're referencing Anakin, how could he have possibly killed all those sand people? That's not possible for one person to do that.
Right. I also thought it was interesting how the character kind of got both Anakin and Luke confused as the same person. I thought that was a great, you know, little plot point in the story of him having to decipher these visions and understand that they were two separate people.
Yeah. And it does play into the prophecy, you know, of balancing the Force.
Right.
Where the Force seems to be even confused with Luke and Anakin. I mean, you know, even though ultimately it's the character, but you know, the Force isn't like making it very clear either, which I thought was, you know, well, if you're going to kind of retcon, because that's been an issue, is who's really the chosen one. If you're going to retcon it, yeah, let's muddy the waters. I thought that was a nice touch. The constant referencing to Sifo Dyas, another nice touch.
Yeah.
I welcomed that. And we got probably the biggest exposition around Maz Kanata that we've gotten in any piece of Star Wars material, more so than The Force Awakens, more so than anything. That you find out about who she is. You find out more about her castle, or what was her castle. That was one of the winners in this book for me, is like, okay, finally, thank you for telling me something about these new fucking characters that I'm somehow supposed to care about or venerate in some kind of way. And that was nice as well. But anyway, so go ahead.
What did you think about the package he was delivering from Doc Ondar to Maz Kanata?
So,
because I thought it was going to be something completely different.
Yeah, well, what were you expecting? Like,
I thought that he was delivering Luke's lightsaber to Maz.
Oh, yeah, that would have been nice if it was that.
I mean, and I'm almost willing to speculate that that's where Maz got it from, was from Doc Ondar, because he's been collecting all these lightsabers for who knows how long.
Yeah.
You would end up with him, and he kind of would decide that it needs to be in Maz's hands.
Yeah, or it would have been amazing if it was Luke's hand. I mean, shit. It'd be like Seven, like the movie Seven. What's in the box? There's Luke's hand.
Wow.
What's in the fucking box?
Talk about Star Wars going dark.
That would have been amazing. Something that's amazing. The Doc Ondar is actually becoming like, I don't know. It's one of those characters where you're just like, oh, cool. That he's there. I've really enjoyed the connection, with him through, even though he's really just a part of Galaxy's Edge, but for him to be so entrenched has been a very nice addition, in my opinion. That's cross sectionality being done right there, or cross media being done right there.
Right.
Yeah. I really liked this book, and they set it up to where we can get more of the characters. I was just amazed that something seemingly so simple would end up being such a well done book overall. And I guess maybe the credit goes to the author, and maybe that the story group isn't as tight knit on it. But what do you got?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say I agree with what you said, and I think if you have to choose between the Star Wars novels that have come out in recent months, I would go with this one. I'd skip Resistance Reborn and go with Force Collector.
It's actually a great introduction to the whole Star Wars story, because the character is experiencing it with you. It's up there as far as, it's certainly in the good ones, and there aren't that many, folks. Or at least in my opinion, there have been ones that are like, wow, yeah, I want to read that. And I expected this thing to be a complete throwaway. I was like, oh, Force Collector, what the fuck could that be about? And it actually ended up being pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So anyway, speaking of something that I think surprised and ended up being pretty damn good, or at least this is now I have not played this. Okay. But Rob, you have actually completed it. And I'm glad that we took the time to release this episode now that you've had the chance to complete it.
Yeah, in fact, I just finished it last night.
So this is as fresh as it gets. Jedi Fallen Order. Now, this is a game, and we'll own up to this, where we have said, man, we are not touching that with a 10-foot pole. And and this is probably going to be a steaming bag of shit on fire. Like there's a very good chance that this just is not going to be good.
And with having been fooled twice now with the two Battlefront games, I don't think you could blame us for taking that tack.
No, I think we were completely justified in it being a piece of shit, and that it would be, because there's been no running history that there is any chance that this would be a good game. I mean, it just really wasn't. But Rob, I've been shocked by what you told me.
Yeah,
lay it down. Go ahead.
Well, I was fully prepared to never touch this game, and then it came out, and people were ranting and raving about it, and I'm like, oh, it can't be this good. But then I heard it actually had a good story, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this a chance. And folks, if you're going to play this game on the PC, I recommend going the route I did. Sign up for Origin Access Premium for $15. I guarantee you can finish this game in 2 weekends.
Right.
And only have paid $15 for it. So there's a value proposition here. Yeah. And I'm not saying this is like some people are saying that this is their favorite Star Wars game. And it's clear that either they've been so starved of good Star Wars games for so long that
Which we have.
they don't remember how good, some of the games of the past, like Knights of the Old Republic and TIE Fighter were. Or they're too young to even remember those games or have even played them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the past 10, 20 years is all you've experienced of Star Wars games, then I can understand why this would be your favorite Star Wars game. It's not a perfect game by any means. It tries to be a lot of things. A lot of people compare it to Dark Souls, and I haven't played those games, but what it did remind me of is kind of a cross between Shadows of Mordor and the Uncharted series.
Yeah. Definitely looked very Uncharted when I would watch gameplay footage. Sure.
And there's that element to it. So and it tries to do both of those things, and it does a passable job at both of them. So the gameplay is just, I would say it's okay. It's not the strongest point of the game. And there are even, some things that I don't understand. Like they have these sequences where like you're squeezing between these narrow passages, and it takes a while for you to do it. And the only purpose seems to be is to slow down the pacing of the game. And in an action game, that's not really what you want.
You don't want to do grinding in an action game.
Yeah. And it's not even really grinding because there's no, real action to it. You're just literally squeezing through a tight corridor.
Okay.
So I don't know what the point of that was. Other than that, like the story, I think where this game really shines is the story. And as we mentioned before, the main character kind of has the same powers as the character in Force Collector, where he's able to like touch objects and get impressions of their history. And that's unfortunately about the most interesting thing about the main character of the game. Every other character in this game is more interesting than the main character. In fact, I've kind of nicknamed him Jedi McBoring Pants.
Well, to be fair, and this is a trick that's as old as Doom, Doom, okay, in the 90s, the idea of making the character, and this is true for Master Chief, go down the list of them, making the main character a vehicle for you, the game player, and so you don't have a lot of depth. I mean, that is a trick. Do you think maybe they were going for that, or what?
The thing is if they're going for that, the thing I don't understand is this character has an awful lot of dialogue.
Right.
So
and again, story is key here, right?
Yeah, so if you're going to give a character a lot of dialogue, you want to make him interesting, and he's really just not interesting. Like, even the little robot that like hangs out on his back is more interesting than him.
Well, so I mean, and Star Wars games can have great central game playing protagonists like Kyle Katarn, like Revan, like go down the list. So so I can appreciate your expectation. Hey, this character should have some meat to him, and he doesn't. But hey, continue.
But other than that, like the rest of it, like I said, all the characters surrounding this are really interesting. You have Sarah, who is kind of playing the role of his guide. She is an ex-Jedi who has cut herself off from the Force.
Kind of like Luke did in Last Jedi.
Yeah, but you feel like she's the story that you get behind that is more compelling than the reasons that Luke had to cut himself off of the Force. Because this is actually a very emotional story with a lot of impact to it, and you get the reasons why she does this, and you understand it. And not only that is that she confronts these reasons in the course of the story, and actually you get closure, which is great.
Nice. Now, you were telling me also that the exploration of, and spoilers, folks, but I mean, how I'm going to experience this, maybe someday I'll play it. I wish it would come out for Switch, because frankly, that and the 3DS are like the two ways that I play video games right now. Just because it's so convenient, you can, have it anywhere. But I'm probably going to watch like the YouTube, on YouTube, they make the game movies where
Yeah.
it's like, they play through it in such a way that it feels like a movie. I've already found one of these. It's like 4 hours long. If the story is so great, I mean, that's the way I want to do it. But so spoiler alerts, but, and we can all go watch it for 4 hours instead of having to trudge through it if one doesn't want to, even though the gameplay is serviceable. But you were telling me, Rob, that like the exploration of Order 66 in this was amazing.
Oh yeah, the entire game is very reverent of the prequels. In fact, the game starts out, oddly enough, on the same planet they visit in Resistance Reborn, where it's kind of like it's a shipwrecker planet where they're basically tearing apart the Republic and Separatist cruisers from the Clone Wars. And so right off the bat, you get that reverence. But they continue too, because they have returning characters like Tarful from Revenge of the Sith. He's a character in this that you're seeking out. They bring back Saw Gerrera, and
that's a nice touch.
Yeah. And you see a lot of Clone Wars tech just kind of lying around. In fact, on Kashyyyk, where you run into Saw, like the rebellion is using the LATs, the LAATs, to transport their soldiers around on the planet, which I thought was really cool. That they were reusing Clone Wars era tech, in the Galactic Civil War era. And the other thing that they bring up was that as you like progress in your powers throughout the game, it happens through flashbacks to your training as a Padawan. And they have the character's Cal Kestis, his Jedi's master was a Lasat named Jaro Tapal. And this guy is just, I mean, I gotta say, he's a badass Jedi. And
is he kind of like what was the guy's? Oh, there was that great Clone Wars trilogy on Umbara. Krell, was it Commander Krell or General Krell? Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, but
was he like badass, like tough, like that guy?
Yes, badass and tough like that guy, but he didn't go to the dark side,
like Krell did. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right, yeah. So he's that kind of level of badass, but like, I don't know I didn't look it up to see who the voice actor was, but like the guy has gravitas, and just like and overall the casting in this game has just really been excellent.
I mean, I'm glad to hear it. I'm also surprised because I remember like seeing the cast. I'm like, especially the lead guy playing, was it Cal there?
Yeah.
But okay.
Like I said, other than him, all the other characters in this game are really interesting. And like so spoiler folks, but basically when you complete your force training and get all your powers in the game, it ends with an Order 66 flashback. And it is fantastic. In fact, I would argue that the Order 66 scene in this game is more emotionally impactful than the scene that they did in Revenge of the Sith.
That's all right. Wait, let me ask this. Okay. Do you see Ayla Secura in this?
No.
Fuck. Well, all right. I mean, that's fine, but
but I mean, that's its strength is that it concentrates on these two characters. Trying to survive Order 66, and you've already kind of you've taken the time to go through a journey with them and understand the dynamic between the two, and then you get a conclusion to that, and it is very powerful.
Yeah, so this sounds like a game where story is what really put it over the top. Because the best review, not as in the most favorable, but the best review that I felt I had read of the game was, it might have been Polygon, and the guy basically said in the review, he says this is good, like all this, it's good. He says, but the problem is that it's also very standardized, and it also feels very like, okay, I think he even compared it to pop music, how pop music today has figured out what key change to do, what notes to do, what beats to do at certain points to make people want to dance to it. And that basically this is the culmination of a game style where, okay, we know it's basically the blockbuster version of, okay, we know what beats to hit, and that makes it a good enough game.
Yeah.
even if it's never really great.
I would agree with that. This is by far not my favorite Star Wars game,
Sure.
but what it does well.
Right.
I think that argument applies more to the gameplay style.
Yeah.
Whereas like I said, the gameplay style is absolutely very derivative of other video games that have come before, and it does a passable job at that. And you probably could make the same arguments about the story, but the story elements that they hit, they play the proper reverence. I mean, for example, the final battle at the game, the ending of the game, a classic Star Wars character appears, and they do him proper justice.
Okay.
And I won't spoil it.
You told me. I know.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But it
Okay.
is like you see this character and you just like, wow. You know? And that's the way that you should feel about this character.
When he shows up.
Yeah.
Oh, I said he. Oh. Ooh. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, when you told me about this is what convinced me, and I instantly went to start searching for a YouTube game movie of it, because I was like, okay, I got to see this. I got to see how this goes down. So yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing with Star Wars, is that, I mean, Star Wars is always a remix of taking the best elements of a lot of different things, but then putting it into that galaxy far, far away, right?
Right.
And so even if it is derivative, like even story-wise, when you put it into Star Wars, it can always kind of take it to the next level. And effectively, what I hear is a game that does what I want Star Wars games to do. You either put me in the cockpit of a starfighter, you give me you give me great lightsaber combat. Let me ask that quick. How is the lightsaber combat in this?
It's okay. I would say it's not quite as good as a Jedi Academy.
Okay.
Or Jedi Knight. To those are still, in my opinion, the superior lightsaber combat games.
Yes.
This one, it's all about. It's one of those games where it's all about the timing. More
like Force Unleashed.
Yeah, in fact, that's the other thing I would say is it's not quite Force Unleashed, but it's very much like that. Here again, I guess that's people who've played Dark Souls will know what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played those games, but from what I have seen them, it is all about kind of like pulling off combos and recognizing the tells that the enemy character is giving you to pull off the right maneuver at just the right time.
Right.
And that's really the core mechanics of the game right there.
Okay. Yeah. So like, I want great lightsaber combat, but it's got to be on the order of Jedi Academy, or Jedi Knight. Like, it's got to be at that level. And
this is the other thing too, is that so I have two other than with getting it on Origin Access for a great deal. I have two other tips for this game. One, you really do have to play this game with the controller. You can't do it with the mouse and keyboard, because I tried. Yeah, I tried to do it with the mouse and keyboard, and I sucked ass.
Okay, that's interesting.
I just got totally thrashed. So it definitely is, what people would call a console port, because it is designed to be played with a controller. Okay. The other tip I have is, here again, if you are playing either on a PC or even on consoles, I don't know if they give you this option, but like the default contrast settings on this game are awful. They make everything look washed out and horrible. So go into the game, bump up the contrast quite a bit, and the game looks spectacular.
Which was a problem we were having with it from what we had seen initially, was the graphics looked completely unimpressive. But you're saying hit up that contrast and it's like a new game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so the third thing on my list was I need something that expands the story of Star Wars in a game. And this sounds like it hits number 3.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and so that makes it worthwhile to me if it does do that.
They introduce a new species in this game that is, from what we can tell, is an extinct species and goes way, way back into Star Wars history. In fact, this might be addressing issues at the earliest point in Star Wars history that we've ever had in the new canon.
Wow. Okay.
And they leave it's here again. This is where the kind of uncharted elements kind of come into play, because it is very sort of like almost a Tomb Raider-ish Uncharted archaeological expedition where you're resurrecting and finding relics from the past and using them to unlock certain things in different areas in the game. And that element is very interesting. The race is called the Zepho, and there's at one point in the game you kind of get a message from them, and they say, and I'm pretty much quoting directly, is that their race was dying and they decided to depart their homeworlds for parts unknown.
Oh.
So I don't know if you want to take that as maybe a reference that maybe this species still exists in the unknown regions.
Right.
But they do kind of leave the game in a state where they could do more.
Okay, so there can be a sequel to this.
There could be a sequel, and there could be more about... I would be really interested to see if this race of aliens, the Zepho, show up in material outside of the games, say in the comics or even in forthcoming TV series. I think that would be really cool if they did that.
Well, I think Lucasfilm has been starting to experiment with this, with dealing with more ancient races. Of course, Star Wars dealt with this before Disney owned it. But like in the Black Spire novel, we know on Batuu, there's a really ancient race there that was really cool to explore. Even in the Star Wars ongoing comic, in its later issues, we end up with basically the species that I call the Rock Lords.
Yep. You have the Inferno Squadron book where they run into the kind of ancient ruins.
Yes. Yeah. So this dealing with history, even beyond Jedi and Sith, really, really ancient history. I love that. That is a way to be mysterious and compelling, especially when you have such a great playground like the Star Wars galaxy, to rock with. So I'm glad that they're going down this road. I'm pleased that this is becoming more of it seems like it's becoming more of a thing, including it being in video games. Do you have any idea what how sales are doing on this? Is this a top seller?
From what I hear, is it's doing above expectations.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I'm glad that this is sending a signal to EA that, hey, Star Wars, good single player Star Wars games not only work but are profitable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, EA's contract with Disney, I think, is up in like 2 or 3 years.
Oh.
So part of me almost wished that it was going to be bad so that they would, branch out to other, publishers to make Star Wars game, which I really think needs to happen regardless of whether this game is good or not.
Yeah. I mean, so you kind of hope that it sold bad. That way there was less of a chance that Disney would re-up with EA.
Yeah, but I have a feeling at this point, like if they take the market signal that this game is sending, and they keep making more of this, then they're probably going to hang on to it.
God damn it. Well, so there's no multiplayer in this, right?
No. In fact,
none.
that's the other, nice lesson that this is giving EA is that there's no multiplayer, there's no DLC other than if you buy like the digital deluxe version.
Yeah.
Which here again, if you go with the Origin access, premiere way that I did, you get all that premium content plus the pre-order content.
Okay.
So, don't worry about that.
I mean, and I know they want to send a signal that they're not making everything about multiplayer because both Battlefront games have been a huge mistake or have been failures on a lot of accounts that EA has done in the past few years. I was thinking about it. I was wondering because we talked about how Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast got re-released for a lot of platforms, and they stripped out the multiplayer on it, which is a shame because Jedi Outcast has awesome multiplayer.
Yeah.
But I think I was beginning to wonder if they stripped out the multiplayer because they want to somehow appease this notion of releasing single player games, which I'm not that opposed to. Just Jedi Outcast is the wrong one to strip out the fucking multiplayer on. But anyway, so, okay. Well, I mean, this is amazing that this actually ended up being a good fucking game. Equally amazing because my understanding is that it was originally not a Star Wars game. It was meant to be something else.
Right.
I mean, what's the not? Yeah, and look, I want to be clear on this. Granted, that did not inspire confidence in me, but that just because something was originally meant to be another game and switches IP, switches to a franchise, does not mean a bad thing. For example, Super Mario Brothers 2 in the United States was supposed to be a completely different game. And it ended up becoming one of the most beloved Mario games of all time and would actually get cross-ported to Japan because it was so popular. Also, Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube was originally like called Dinosaur Planet or something. It had nothing to do with Star Fox. I love that fucking game. And Fox is killer in it. So, you can do that. You can switch IPs on a game and it ends up being great. Yeah. I mean, what was the deal with that though? Were they just planning on being an action game? What was?
Yeah, they did it. If you get the digital deluxe version, it does come with like a little making of documentary, and they do address this in there. And apparently, they were in the very, very, very early stages of making a different game for a whole new IP.
Right.
But it was in such an early state that they didn't really have any like major story sit down. They were mainly concerned with getting the engine and the mechanics of the game set. So they just had the foundation level, done when they kind of had EA approach them with the possibility of the Star Wars game, and they decided to shift gears and to turn this game into a Star Wars game. So it's not even like they were deep into development on this game that they were originally making. It was apparently going to be an action melee sort of game.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like it turned out to be a winner. I mean, hey, whatever it originally started as, that's phenomenal. So, well, we were gonna at the end of this episode, we were gonna talk about what's coming up in 2020. What we know is coming up in 2020. I'm actually gonna bump that into the next episode of TIE Fighter Renegades, but I want to stick on EA here, and we're gonna end this off with. If you're good, actually, real quick, Rob, we're going to talk more EA here, but real quick, if out of 10, what would you give this game? I mean, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but out of 10, what would you give Jedi Fallen Order?
I'd say like a good 7.5.
That's pretty good.
It's almost an 8. I did have some technical issues, so there are some bugs in this game. I did have probably about 4 or 5 crashes to desktop, so. If it didn't have those, I would probably give it a solid, 8. But as it is, it's around 7.5 for me, which is not a bad score.
Yeah, no, that is a game worth playing these days if it gets a 7.5, because not many would. Especially for a Star Wars game. Yeah, absolutely. Because
understanding, like I give Battlefront, a 2 or a 3.
And I give Tiny Death Star a 3, so it's better than Battlefront. Yeah. Fucking A. Well, so there you go, folks. Check it out if you like. I'm definitely going to be watching the gameplay movie, and I save those anyways because I'm probably almost never going to open up Battlefront 2 ever again to experience the story of Iden Versio, as much of a shit show as that ended up being, even though it didn't need to be. But regardless, speaking of shit show, and actually speaking of Battlefront 2, Rob, you took to, I mean, now, Rob, here's the thing, okay? So Rob is, in my heart, absolutely my brother. And the thing, and he is the sweetest guy you're ever going to meet in your life. The thing is I feel like Rob, he's like, I don't know. And I mean this in the absolute kindest of ways. And I know we both love dogs, so that's okay. I mean, I feel like he's that really sweet looking pit bull that you could just never imagine if you unleash him,
Yeah.
And he'll go right for the throat and you're done. Go ahead.
I'm passionate, I love the things and the people that I love. So, yeah.
So,
and if I'm gonna make a point, I'm gonna go straight for the throat.
Well, you went for the throat on the writer of the single player story in Battlefront 2, and he engaged. I mean, credit to him, he engaged. He didn't just hit the button on Twitter, ignore, or anything like that. He engaged. Give me this breakdown, because we got to talk about this, because this gets philosophical, and we'll end off with this, but we want to get into it.
I mean, and understand, folks, I don't go seeking these interactions out, especially on social media. I mean,
Rob and I hate social media, by the way.
Yeah, really. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't even use Facebook anymore, and I barely use Twitter.
Right.
But Twitter has this tendency of showing you tweets of of people that you follow that they follow.
Yeah.
So that's how I ran into this. I didn't go seeking this guy out. I don't give a shit about him. I really don't. But this tweet shows up on my, whatever you want to call it, timeline or whatever, of this guy just basically patting his own back about how great his work on Battlefront 2 of the single player campaign was.
Mm-hmm. And
someone else even responded to this and said, I really felt like that Iden Versio's transformation from, Imperial, shock trooper to, and crack pilot to, rebel hero was really, kind of telegraphed and poorly handled. And, and he responds with basically saying, well, yeah, it was telegraphed because we telegraphed it. And I'm like, that's terrible. And not only, and so I bring up the point that, hey, you guys, I know you're really proud of your work here, but you dropped the ball on this because you didn't really have a good transition from the book that was the prequel to your game, that being Inferno Squadron, which was a fantastic book, and I love that book.
Yeah, by Alexander Freed, phenomenal.
And I also brought up the point that at Celebration 2017, the people, the leads on this project, were literally advertising this game as being from the Empire's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear about this. You had Janina Gavankar, right? Is that her name? Who played Iden Versio? She was at like events. They never had her in Rebel outfits. They had her coming out with stormtroopers. They had her wearing her TIE fighter outfit, her Inferno Squadron outfit and everything. They were billing her. She's the Imperial. I was all over it on social media at that time, on Instagram, on Twitter, everything she was talking about for the Empire, all this shit. I mean, they were absolutely billing this as you're going to be playing the Empire. No doubt about it.
Right. And his response was that, oh, well, that book was drowning in dysfunction, and the story was, about overcoming doubt to achieve loyalty. And, the story was about the breaking point that followed that book. But I'm like, you didn't even really wrap up any of the really what I consider the major crux of internal conflict within Iden, which was her relationship with her mother. Like, she doesn't even get mentioned in the game.
Right.
And suddenly she goes from being this and granted, he's right, like a really dysfunctional character to is like she joins the rebellion and it solves all of her mental problems.
Yeah, and then she goes in and has a kid, right?
Yeah, it's bullshit. And he's like, well, it was never, it was never their plan from the beginning to have her be with the Empire for very long in the game, which, like I said, I already said that, well, that's not the game that was sold to us. And he says, well, that's not a game where you play the, as a character in the Empire is not going to be very interesting. And I think, then I bring up, well, what about TIE Fighter? It was probably one of the greatest, Star Wars game ever made. And it was entirely from the pure point of view. And here, I'll go ahead and read his response word for word so that there's no confusion about what it was that his response to me bringing up TIE Fighter.
All right, well, hold on. Let me, before you read it, let me say this quick. Let's understand this. TIE Fighter is in every single top 10 list for PC games. Every single one, it's in the top 10. It's that good. Even 30 years after it's come out, it's that good. All right, go for it.
So his response, that's fine. I'm not interested in telling a story where xenophobic, genocidal slavers are portrayed as the beacons of heroism and goodness.
Oh.
And there you have it. This is why we'll never get another TIE Fighter-like game.
That's why they'll probably never re-release it either.
Right.
He just doesn't get it. Like,
No.
I mean, and oh man, that is so small-minded. And I have so much I want to say about that. I mean, how did you feel when he responded with that? Obviously disappointment and like, oh god damn it. But you know what?
I really wanted to rip into him further, and just blast him with pretty much probably the same things that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I wasn't going to get very far with this guy. There was really no point in continuing it other than me making the point that, it is possible to tell stories about, evil without endorsing evil.
Right. I mean, well then, you know what? Don't make Akuma a playable character in Street Fighter 2. Don't make Shang Tsung a playable character in Mortal Kombat. I mean, we could go down the list of don't do Knights of the Old Republic, I guess, then, because, you get the choice to be like a very evil fucking person in those games.
Or even the first Jedi Knight game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, they don't get it. Like, no, we wanted, a video game is very much, I mean, it's not true for everybody, but I think by and large, video games, I mean, they are fantasy realized. You get to take control. Okay. It is your dreams, in some form of digital reality, okay, that you get to experience. And it's not necessarily something that you might not even like, but you get to experience it. That's the idea. And whether it's evil or whatever, oh man, no, this is why, yes, we like TIE Fighter because it gave us such a fresh perspective. It doesn't mean that everybody that plays TIE Fighter wants to go sign up for some army somewhere, or that, somehow they're all supporting, and saying, I don't know, Hail Hitler or something like that. I mean, that's outrageous to make that kind of claim.
In fact, I would make the argument that there's plenty of material out there, including in Star Wars, that does make people go sign up for the military.
Oh yeah. No, I don't like, and in fact, I mean, well, I'll call this. I mean, I think it's much easier to make the argument that the rebellion is a bunch of goddamn terrorists and they're fucking brutal. And I mean, look at Cassian in Rogue One.
Yeah,
I mean, he just offs that dude, with no problem. And it's like, wait a minute, ironically, even though most people don't see this, and I know Disney doesn't want you to see it this way, there are if any, there are almost no real good guys in Star Wars. Like, both sides are fucking shit. And a little bit of credit to, in Last Jedi, to Rian Johnson. He kind of tried to hint at that, and in fact, and also Filoni, I mean, even Yoda saying, look, what, war doesn't make one great. There's no wars where,
Yeah. I mean,
they just totally missed everything, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, like, if I would even argue that if there are any good guys in the entire Star Wars saga, it's the new Mandalorians.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that.
And look what happened to them.
Yeah. This is, I mean, that again, it's really short-sighted. It is very limiting. And it really, if people have that attitude that they are not willing, it kind of speaks to, I wonder if this is what's going on in Hollywood, why we can't get any great villains anymore. It's because these people, I don't know what does the guy not have the sack to write a genuinely bad guy that does really bad shit?
Well, I think I have my conspiracy theories about this guy personally, because I mean, apparently this was his first writing job on any video game, or let alone any piece of fiction, period. His work previous to this was being an editor at IGN.
Yeah, and they're entrenched in the industry. I mean,
exactly. So I mean, I'm not going to say that it was a I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of situation, but I would be surprised.
Yeah. No, I mean, IGN is literally bought and paid for. I mean, like, you don't go there to get an honest review for anything. Holy fuck. Yeah, I when you told me about this, I was just like, oh, we're definitely talking about that. But, again, if you don't get to explore all facets of the human condition, even the ugly ones, I don't like it. I don't think you get to do really great storytelling that again can encapsulate the human condition in its entirety. And, you know, I'm a fan of the Empire in Star Wars, but that's partly because I think they're a little more honest than most of the good guys in Star Wars. And like, I almost take the honesty over anything else, you know, but again, that does not mean that that I'm some evil, fascist asshole. In fact, I dare say quite the opposite.
Right.
That's really disappointing. And that's such a bullshit response, for him to have given. You have any other thoughts on this, Rob?
No, I mean, hopefully this is an isolated incident.
Yeah.
Hopefully that, I don't think Battlefront. Apparently, the initial sales numbers on it were fairly good, but it dropped off precipitously after the first, I think, month.
Mm-hmm,
and I given that we got Jedi Fallen Order as the next Star Wars game, does seem like a course correction. And
yeah.
I hope they stick with that course correction and they never hire this guy again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, people were so unimpressed, I think, with Battlefront 2 that, yeah, hopefully that'll be the case. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame too, because I mean, there was some good like Lando was great in Battlefront 2.
Yes.
I mean, I get it, but
yeah, Lando and the other the Sherv.
Oh yeah, his buddy.
Right. Yeah, his buddy in that. I mean, they had a good comedic dynamic, and they did something similar in Jedi Fallen Order with the pilot. He was a very similar sort of character. In fact, I'd love to see these two characters get together at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic. You can say there's nothing new under the sun. There is the classic Greek tale, of course, of the Chimera and Bellerophon. And the concept in that, in Greek tragedy, is that you can't have a great hero without a really great villain. And that, I think that might be the most bothersome with a lot of this, is that they are it just feels like it's not willing to, and no one is. Like I said, we've been talking about this whole episode. Nobody's willing to spend time with villains. Nobody's willing to write great villains. If I want to get conspiratorial, I'd say it's because if they actually wrote a great villain and a modern audience saw it today, they would see, holy shit, everybody in every seat of power is a fucking villain, and because I think it would be that point blank anytime you show any kind of authoritarianism, and like you actually explore it a little bit and how people get to these positions and everything. And I think that's how far it would go, but I'm being conspiratorial in that. I'll admit it. But yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it when we can't explore the villains, because that's a side of ourselves that gets expressed that is worthwhile to explore, even in video games, especially in video games, a medium that is so interactive.
Right.
And you know what? Fuck, if you enjoy it in a video game, then fucking enjoy it. Who gives a rat's ass? I mean, that's oh well. I mean, that's like, the more I think about this, I mean, really, that's like saying that people that play Age of Empires, are a bunch of like petty tyrants walking around, and that's absolute horseshit. That's total horseshit. Yes, that's ridiculous to make that kind of claim. So anyway, well, you want to wrap this one up? Let's wrap it up. Okay, this is one of the longest episodes we've done. So let's wrap this up. And that's saying something. That is saying something. I think we say it almost every month. So yeah, I know. So like come 2021, TFR is probably going to be about 4 hours per episode. So. But anyway, well, Rob, let's ask it. Let's end it off. I mean, let's do the barometer check. Let's do the thermometer check. Let's do the thermometer check. How are you feeling about Star Wars right now, man? Despite episode 9 coming out and me not being all that excited about it, I'm very hopeful about the future of Star Wars. Yeah. It's in a good place right now with The Mandalorian and Jedi Fallen Order, and like books like Force Collector. Mm-hmm. If they keep that up, then Star Wars has a very bright future. Yeah. I'm going to second that. All of that. I think that Star Wars is doing very well. It actually has some wins under its belt, which a lot of franchises right now, I think, can't say. I mean, Mandalorian is just taking everything by storm, rightfully so. Glad to hear about Jedi Fallen Order. We do have some books that are pretty good. Some of the comics I've been enjoying. There's enough there to stand tall above other franchises right now. And so, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about Star Wars 2, which I was not the last episode we recorded. I was like, no, episode 9 is going to have to be fucking amazing or we're screwed. As to where now I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
no, you get, they got some things figured out, and definitely excited for the future.
Yeah, I'm going to be excited for the future, no matter what happens later this month.
Right on. Same here. But next time we gather, you are going to hear mine and Rob's review of Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. I guarantee no matter how the movie is, our review is going to be entertaining as fuck. No, there's no way around that. So until next time, and that is after Episode 9, Rob and I, we will see all of you on the other side.